This happened when I just turned 19 and moved into my first real place, a small studio apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much. The walls were thin, the carpet smelled faintly of bleach, and the bathroom sink whined whenever you turned the faucet. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had my own space. On move-in day, my landlord handed me the keys, then gave me a strange warning. Oh, and don't be too friendly with Charlie. He's a bit, eccentric. Big, what do you call it? A Grand Theft Auto fan. Real big. I laughed it off. Eccentric neighbors were part of apartment living, right? Besides, I like Grand Theft Auto too. Maybe we'd get along. That first night, I couldn't sleep. New places always made me restless. I sat on my mattress scrolling through my phone when I heard something outside. It was the sound of water splashing. I saw the time. It was 1:30 in the morning. I got up, pulled the blinds, and looked out. There was a man right next to our building. He was in his backyard, wearing nothing but underwear and socks. In one hand, he held a garden hose, and with the other, he was caressing his shiny, bald head. All this while watering his plants in slow, deliberate sweeps. It was bizarre enough on its own, but then it hit me. I'd seen this exact scene before, but where? It took me a moment to remember that in the GTA 6 trailer, there's an exact scene. That must be Charlie. I watched in silence, trying not to laugh out loud. He was watering the plants and every few seconds half squatting in his underwear. Maybe they were too tight for him. Honestly, if you wake up in the middle of the night hearing a sound outside your window, it ends up being some freak or psycho stalking you. But in my case, I stumbled on pure comedy. No doubt the landlord warned me about him. What a loser, I said in my head. Charlie's Wi-Fi has more connections than he does. I might have laughed a little loud because suddenly he looked up at my window. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then a slow, unsettling grin stretched across his face. The hose slipped from his hand, water spilling across his feet. He didn't look that funny, honestly. His skin was too pale, and his eyes were very, very frightening, like he had some condition that was beyond cure. There were no eyebrows or even a beard patch on his face, which made him look even more alien. Our stare down lasted for a minute. Then he bolted straight toward my building. I staggered back from the blinds, my heart slamming against my ribs. A moment later, pounding erupted against my door.
Let me in!
Charlie's voice was muffled but frantic.
We should be friends! We love the same game!
I froze. The pounding grew louder and faster, each slam shaking the thin wood of my door. His voice, once eager, grew sharp and manic.
Open it! Open the door! We love the same game!
Panic gripped me.
What? I don't even know you!
Just leave before I call the cops.
Come on, don't be shy. You're just like me. That's why you're watching me, right? I know we're the same. Just open the door.
I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Charlie was not only banging, he was literally kicking down the door. My voice cracked as I told the dispatcher someone was trying to break into my apartment. I forced my voice steady and shouted through the door. The cops are coming! Leave! The pounding stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard him laugh. It was as if he found something funny that I didn't understand. I could still see his shadow beneath my door. He was just standing there, not moving. Minutes passed. He didn't knock again, didn't say a word, just stood there. And then, quietly, he walked away. When the cops arrived, he was gone. One officer pointed at my door with a serious face. What I saw gave me goosebumps. There were stains of blood on my door. Not just that, an uprooted human nail was stuck on the hardwood. Charlie tried so hard to get in that he didn't care he was hurting himself. The cops checked the property, took my statement, and told me to lock my windows and doors. I nodded, pretending I'd feel safer knowing that, but I didn't. There was no proof that it was Charlie since our building had no security camera. The cops couldn't press any charges on him. They even went to his house to talk to him, but no one answered. By the morning, I began to think that perhaps I had overreacted. Maybe he was just lonely. But then I opened my door and found a pair of dirty men's underwear, crumpled, stained, and left on my doormat like it was some kind of gift. My stomach turned. I backed inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it again. I don't know if he left it as a joke or a warning or some twisted gesture of friendship. I didn't want to know. That was the final straw. I packed up that same day and called my landlord, told him I was breaking the lease. He didn't argue. I knew he knew exactly why. It's been months since I left that apartment, but I can't shake the image of Charlie's grin, his bare feet slapping against the pavement as he ran toward me, his fists hammering on my door like he could break through at any second. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't called the cops, if I'd opened the door instead. Would he have stood there grinning, tried to talk? Or would he have stepped inside, locked the door behind him, and made sure I could never leave? I don't want to know. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. My stomach was folding in on itself, making angry little noises like it was talking back to me. Broke, jobless, and one couch away from sleeping in an alley. That night, I was wandering the empty midnight streets, hoping, praying I'd find a miracle. Instead, I found a Five Guys outlet. It was dark, lights off, chairs flipped on tables. I guess it was closed, and was thinking about where to go next when I heard the sound of wood hitting a hard surface. It was coming from the back of the restaurant. I followed the sound, thinking some shady business might be taking place, but realized it was the back door. Probably the staff who closed the restaurant forgot to lock it. The wind was making it swing. Clouds of thought crowded my mind. I stood there for a minute, debating. Morals don't mean much when you're starving. I told myself I'd just look. Maybe someone forgot a bag of fries. Maybe anything left in the freezer to eat to stop me from fainting. The door creaked slightly when I slipped in. The kitchen smelled like heaven. Grease, beef, something hot and real. The fryers were off, but the griddle still radiated warmth. I checked the freezer and leftover burgers wrapped in foil. There was even a jar of chocolate milkshake. It was like in search of stones, I struck gold. I unwrapped the burger and didn't care if it was cold, just took a big bite. The meat poured life into me. I glugged half the jar of milkshake. Some of it even spilled on my clothes, running down my chin as I chugged too fast, but again, I didn't care. I was bloody hungry. God, I nearly cried. I was almost done with the burger and was about to leave when I heard one more noise. I'll call it a noise because it came from a human. A muffled whimpering of a man came from a distance. It was faint and coming from the storeroom. I should have left right then. I crept forward, drawn in like some idiot in a horror flick who just had to open the door. I eased it open, just a little, and peeked inside. The storeroom was mostly in darkness, but there was one spotlight hanging from the ceiling. Under that light sat a man, tied to a wooden chair. His shirt was soaked with sweat and something darker. There was duct tape over his mouth. His eyes were wide and looked red from crying too long. I was thinking about who kept him here, when suddenly someone giggled in the darkness and two women surfaced into the light. They moved around him and began dancing like kids playing house. Both wore nurse costumes that looked like bad Halloween knockoffs, all white but splashed with fake blood, or maybe not. One had short hair and a baseball bat in her hand. The other had messy curls. The curly one picked up a chainsaw and twirled it like a ballerina, as if she was completely harmless. The short-hair one took out her phone and started filming the man. Then, she whispered something in the man's ear, and he started crying harder. The nurse with the chainsaw giggled louder, seeing him cry.
Aw, don't be such a baby. We haven't even started yet.
She waved the chainsaw in front of his face, close enough for him to flinch, but didn't touch him.
Shh, don't fight it. I've put plenty of patients to sleep. You'll be no different. Scream for the camera!
The other chimed in like it was a nursery rhyme. My heart was pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. I started backing away. I didn't care about the burger anymore. And then, creak. The door, of course. Always the damn door. Both women stopped. The one with the chainsaw tilted her head.
Aw, look.
She whispered. Her grin stretched wider than seemed possible.
A new patient?
I bolted, didn't look back, didn't grab my half-eaten burger, just ran, out the back, through the alley, across the street. I didn't stop until I collapsed behind a dumpster 4 blocks away, lungs burning, sweat cold on my skin. Hours later, when my breathing finally settled and I came to my senses, I went to the police station, breathless, smelling like kitchen grease and fear. I told them about the man, the women, the chainsaw, everything. They checked the place but found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no man, no duct tape, no traces of blood, not even a damn fry out of place. They looked at me like I was tweaking. On the contrary, they warned me for breaking in and let me go. But I know what I saw. I didn't hallucinate it. I wasn't high, wasn't drunk. I know the difference between a joke and a nightmare. Those women were real. That man was real. And the worst part? They saw me too. This happened a week ago. Since then, I haven't slept right. I keep thinking I see them. In crowds, reflections, shadows. Last night, someone slipped me a note under the door of the crappy motel I'd been crashing in. No envelope, just a folded paper, handwritten in red marker.
Patients don't leave without saying goodbye.
I'm scared. Not paranoid. Scared. Who are they? Why 5 guys? Why the costume, the camera? Was it live streamed? Is there a video of that poor guy somewhere online with hashtags and laughing comments under it? And what if I'm next? Tonight, I checked out of the motel, cashed in my last favor to sleep on my friend Marcus's couch. He doesn't know what's going on, just thinks I'm down on luck, which I am. But it's more than that now. It's like I've stumbled into something dark and viral, something designated to be seen. They wanted an audience, and I gave it to them. I don't think they'll let me forget that.
I've been a sound engineer for 20 years, but starting my own YouTube channel was something I'd been putting off forever, until my girlfriend Sarah finally convinced me to try it.
Babe, you should totally do ASMR. Not like the whispery weird stuff. I'm talking real sounds. City noises, traffic, rain on windows, construction. You hear that stuff differently. I don't know, you could make it feel kinda cozy?
It was the exact push I needed. The channel was doing okay. After 3 months of consistency and hard work, I was getting the views and even managed to bag a few thousand subscribers. But I needed something different for my Halloween upload. It had to be authentic, to really capture people's attention. That's how I ended up in a cemetery at 2 a.m. with my portable recorder. The place dated back to the 1800s, full of weathered headstones and ancient oak trees, perfect for capturing that eerie nighttime ambiance my subscribers seem to love. I spent 20 minutes walking the winding paths, recording the rustle of dead leaves and distant cricket songs. I was enjoying the ambiance when I saw a woman in the graveyard. She was standing beside a granite headstone, about 50 yards away, perfectly still in the moonlight, clutching the marble surface like she was trying to hold herself upright. I figured she was grieving, but then I noticed her clothes and a creepy feeling brushed onto me. Her clothes were dirty, and other than dust, she had some very suspicious stains which could be blood or something else. Her hair was all messed up and she looked badly beaten. "Hi, ma'am. Is everything all right?" She didn't reply. Thinking she's some homeless woman under influence, I minded my business and kept recording. But as I got closer, I could see she wasn't just standing there quietly. Her shoulders were shaking. Thick saliva was dripping from her mouth, catching the moonlight as it fell to the ground. Suddenly, she started gasping, like she couldn't breathe. "Ma'am, are you okay? I can call someone if you..." Before I could finish, she began vomiting, and in that clear moonlight, I saw her vomiting blood. Thick, dark fluid poured from her mouth, while her eyes rolled back in shortness of breath. It splattered against the headstone and pooled at her feet. Soon, trails of blood dripped from her eyes, rolling down her pale cheeks. I was only a couple of feet away from her when the woman's head snapped toward me, with a sound like breaking bones. Her eyes weren't human. I shrieked and turned to run, but she moved faster than any human could. She got to me in seconds and grabbed my shoulders from behind. Before I could react, she rotated me towards her. She tried to speak, but only blood came out. Thick, clotted chunks splattered across my jacket and face, warm and reeking. The smell was indescribable, like rot and iron. I screamed and yanked my arm free, tearing skin against her grip, but she was relentless. Her other hand shot out and wrapped around my throat, squeezing until my vision blurred. My legs kicked uselessly beneath me, scraping against broken stone and damp earth. Then, with a guttural sound like a dying engine, she lifted me off the ground and hurled me across the cemetery. I toppled over the grass hard, but didn't stop to think or scream. I bolted straight out of the cemetery, like hell itself was chasing me, crashing through bushes and stumbling over headstones until I reached my car. I couldn't stop shaking until I got home, where Sarah was still awake, editing photos on her laptop.
How did the recording go?
I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. She looked pale, but I could tell she didn't believe me fully.
We should go back in the morning. In daylight. See what's actually there.
I didn't want to, but she was right. If there really was something wrong, if someone was hurt or sick, we needed to call for help. We drove to the cemetery the next morning at around 10. I found the headstone easily enough, though it looked less spooky in the daylight. There was no sign of bloodstains or anything suspicious. The name carved into the granite nearby read Margaret Holloway, 1962 to 1995, beloved wife. An elderly man was tending nearby graves. Sarah asked him about Margaret Holloway. "Oh, you heard about Maggie," he said, leaning on his rake. "Poor soul. Her husband poisoned her back in '95, mixed bleach into her food over several weeks. She died a painful death, vomiting blood as her organs failed." My blood went cold. "Locals say her spirit never left," the old man continued. "Folks have seen her here at night, sick and suffering, just like when she died. Of course, most people don't believe in that sort of thing anymore." Sarah drove us home while I sat in the passenger seat, trying to process what had happened. I couldn't explain what I saw, but when I checked my recorder later, it had captured everything. 23 minutes of ambient cemetery sounds, then 7 minutes of gutturals, gasps, and chokings. For a second, I considered calling the police, but what would I even say? That a ghost attacked me? They'd think I was insane. I deleted the file, determined to put it in the past. I still make ASMR videos, but nothing involving graveyards or supposedly haunted locations. Some experiences aren't worth the content, and some sounds shouldn't be recorded. Sometimes I think about Margaret Holloway, trapped in her final moments of agony, reliving her death night after night in that cemetery. I wonder if she was trying to tell me something, or if she was just lost in her own endless suffering. Either way, I never want to see her again, but I do hope her soul finds rest someday. The doorbell rang at 2:47 a.m. on Halloween night. I know because I checked my phone, thinking it was some drunk idiots pulling pranks. I swear I was ready to report them this time, but when I looked through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped. He was standing on my porch, smiling that warm smile I hadn't seen in over a month. I yanked the door open and threw my arms around him.
Dad! What are you doing here? Why didn't you call?
I just missed my baby girl, he said, hugging me, but his skin felt cold through the jacket, and when I pulled away, I noticed how pale he looked. He was nearly gray.
Are you feeling okay? You look...
I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired from the long drive. How about we make some of that mac and cheese you used to love? We spent the next hour in the kitchen, laughing and talking. Dad told me all about fresh investments, Mom's garden, and roasted my ex-boyfriend like he had personally offended him, which he did. But even through the normalcy, I could feel it in the air. Something was off about him. Dad kept glancing towards the windows, and every time a car drove by, his whole body would tense up.
Dad, seriously, what's wrong? You're acting weird.
There's nothing wrong, Princess. Suddenly, the doorbell went off. Dad's face went white as a sheet, like someone had drained all the blood from his body. Don't answer that, he said, before I could step down from the stool.
What? Why not? It's probably some drunk...
Whoever's out there wants to hurt you bad. Don't go near that door, Camilla. The doorbell rang again, and this time it didn't stop ringing. Suddenly, there was pounding and rattling, as if someone was trying to pull the door off its hinges. Whoever it was, they were extremely desperate to get in.
Dad, lay low! I'm calling the cops!
They won't make it in time. Go to the basement, now!
What? I'm not leaving you alone to...
Before I could finish the sentence, the living room window exploded. Glass shards flew everywhere as this guy in a torn hoodie climbed through, holding a crowbar that caught the light like a blade. His eyes were wild, darting around the room like a cornered animal. Nobody moves! He screamed, waving the crowbar. I just need a place to hide! Before I could react, Dad grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the basement door. His grip was impossibly strong, stronger than I even remembered. Go hide! He pushed me so hard I stumbled down the first few steps. The basement door slammed shut behind me, and I heard the loud click.
Dad! Dad!
I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. What happened next was the worst 20 minutes of my life. I lay slumped against the door, listening to hell break loose above me. Furniture crashed against walls, glass shattered. I could hear Dad shouting, then the intruder screaming back. My whole body was shaking. All I could think about was that crowbar in the guy's hand and my dad up there alone. Dad was 52, had a bad back from years of construction work, and this maniac looked young and desperate. What if he killed him? What if I were listening to my father die and couldn't do anything to help?
Please, God. Please don't let him hurt my dad.
I whispered over and over, tears streaming down my face. The sounds got worse. There were even more crashes, something that sounded like a body hitting the wall. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear everything. Then came that ear-piercing shriek that made my blood freeze. It didn't sound human, more like an animal being slaughtered. It went on forever before cutting off into dead silence. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, shaking and crying before I heard sirens. The police had to break down the basement door because somehow it had gotten jammed. Are you hurt? The first cop asked, helping me up the stairs. Outside, the living room looked like a war zone. Furniture was overturned. There was glass everywhere and blood splattered on the walls. They found the intruder curled up in the corner, rocking back and forth and babbling about fiery spirit. He broke into the gas station down the street first, one of the officers explained. Then came here looking for somewhere to hide. Lucky you were smart enough to hide in the basement. Probably saved your life.
Dad! Where's my dad? Where is he?
I sobbed. The cops looked confused. Your dad? Ma'am, there's no one else here.
But he was here. We were talking in the kitchen and when that guy broke in.
Ma'am, we've searched the whole house. You're the only one here. That's when my phone rang. It was Mom.
Camilla, we've been trying to call you. Your father. He had a heart attack at work tonight. He's gone, baby. He died at 1:30.
The phone slipped from my hands, clattering on the floor. 1:30 a.m. An hour and 17 minutes before he'd shown up at my door. The cops were staring at me now, probably thinking I was in shock. One of them picked up my phone and handed it back to me. "Your mother wants to talk to you," he said gently. I looked around the destroyed living room, at the blood on the walls, at the intruder still muttering about seeing a dead man.
He came to protect me.
I gulped. Even in death, Dad had kept his promise to always be there when I needed him. The intruder was still raving about the ghost he'd seen, about how the old man had appeared out of nowhere with eyes that looked right through him. The cops thought he was having a psychotic break, but I knew better. Dad had come home one last time to save me. Dads will do anything for their kids, and not even God can intervene. The park was supposed to be empty at this hour, except for those rusted swings creaking in the wind, and that once flickering streetlight that cast everything in sickly yellow. But there he was, sitting on the picnic table under the pavilion, completely focused on whatever he was doing with his hands. At first, I thought he was dealing drugs. The way he kept checking over his shoulder nervously screamed illegal activity. But as I got closer, I realized he was whisking something in a small bowl. He looked up and our eyes met. Most people would have been embarrassed, caught doing weird stuff in public. Not this guy, though. He beamed like he reconciled with an old friend from school. "Perfect timing," he clapped. "I was just about to begin the ceremony." Everything in my gut told me to keep walking, but he seemed harmless enough. A middle-aged weirdo, sporting a cardigan that almost every American dad donned to church. "Ceremony?" I asked, stepping closer. "The matcha ceremony. It requires 2 people or it brings terrible luck." He gestured to the empty bench across from him. "Please, I've been waiting so long for someone to share this with." "I don't know, man. I should really get home." His smile faltered, and desperation flickered across his face. "Please? You don't understand. I can't do this alone. The ceremony has to be shared or she won't forgive me." "She?" I glanced around the empty park, but we were completely alone. "A small cup of matcha," he pleaded. "That's all I need." I didn't want to be rude. Besides, he looked fragile and really in need of some company. I joined him. The bench was cold and damp, and the air reeked of rust, like wilted petals steeped in metal. He had all the equipment precisely laid out. There was a bamboo whisk, a black ceramic bowl, and even one of those little scoops for measuring powder. "My mom taught me this," he said, beginning to whisk again. "Every morning for 23 years, we shared matcha together. It was our thing." "Did she pass recently?" I asked, trying to be polite. 3 months ago. His whisking never paused. "Lost to cancer. But she made me promise that I won't stop the ceremony. The tradition must not die with me, Marcus," she said. Those were her last words. Marcus. Now I had a name to go with the increasingly bad vibes radiating from this guy. He finished whisking and carefully divided the matcha between 2 bowls. The matcha looked too bright, almost glowing. He slid one to me. "Together," he said, raising his bowl with both hands. "On 3. 1, 2. I lifted the bowl as well. The steam carried a bitter, earthy smell that reminded me of soil after rain. 3. We both sipped at once. The moment it touched my tongue, my soul shivered. This wasn't matcha. It tasted scorched, like dirt scraped from a fire pit. Grit clung to my teeth while the ham and cheese burger churned in my gut. I spat it out, coughed, and did everything to rid myself of the bitterness coating my mouth like ash. While Marcus burst into manic laughter, the sound ricocheted off the empty. His shoulders convulsed as he doubled over, still clutching his bowl, oblivious to the grit coating his tongue. I stared at him, stunned. "Ugh, what the hell was that?" I demanded, wiping my mouth with my sleeve.
Instead of answering, Marcus reached into a duffel bag I hadn't noticed before and pulled out a brass urn, the kind you see at funerals. There was a small plaque on the front that read, "Beloved Mother, Emily."
She wanted to remain part of the ceremony forever,
Marcus said between fits of laughter.
so I made sure she could every time I sipped matcha, just like always.
The taste in my mouth suddenly made horrible sense. I lurched to my feet, but my legs felt weak.
Did you put her ashes? What the? Are you insane? I'm devoted.
Marcus shrieked, unscrewing the top of the urn.
23 years we did this together, dude, and now you get to be a part of it too.
He tilted the urn and poured gray ash directly into his mouth, chewing and swallowing like it was candy. Ash spilt down his chin, coating his cardigan in chalky dust. He was making these awful choking sounds, but he kept shoving more handfuls into his mouth.
I miss you, Mommy, so much.
He gasped between mouthfuls. I fumbled for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely punch 911. Marcus was vomiting now, ash and spit foaming at the corners of his mouth. His eyes had rolled back, showing only whites. 911, what's your emergency?
There's a man in Riverside Park,
I whispered, backing away from the table.
He's eating his mom's ashes. He's choking now. Oh, God, he's...
Marcus suddenly went completely still. For a moment, I thought he was dead. Then, his head snapped up, and he was staring directly at me, with ash-covered teeth bared into a sick grin.
Your turn,
he whispered. I ran immediately, but I could hear him behind me as he chased me toward the street. The cops found him sometime later, unconscious. He'd apparently slipped while holding the urn and cracked his skull on the picnic table. They said he was in a coma, that his brain had swollen from the impact. Lost his mother recently, the officer explained. His neighbors said he'd been acting strange since the funeral. Guess grief affects people differently. I haven't been able to drink tea since that night. Even coffee tastes like ash now. And sometimes, when I'm walking home late from work, I swear I can smell that earthly sweetness in the air. Almost half expecting to see Marcus sitting at that picnic table with his whisk and his bowl and his terrible smile, trying to share his matcha tea. The ceremony requires two, after all. I really had to collect money for the next semester tuition. So, when a woman named Mrs. Henderson commented on my LinkedIn open to work post, offering $300 for a weekend babysitting gig, I jumped on it. It seemed perfect, honestly. 2 days watching one kid while she attended a work conference out of state.
Tommy's grandmother will be here Sunday morning,
Mrs. Henderson explained when I arrived Friday evening. I noticed a bruise on her forehead. A chunk of blood was clotted on the side. Her eyes were too still.
You just need to get through Saturday night. My son is quite easy to manage.
Tommy was this 8-year-old kid who was mentally too. It was weird to watch Mrs. Henderson speak to him in a baby voice and have him in pull-ups. Even his bedroom was set up like a nursery with a crib and a changing table. She said he had severe developmental delays from a childhood accident.
He loves his shows.
She told me, pointing to the laptop.
Cocomelon keeps him perfectly calm. Just put it on whenever he gets fussy, and don't let him stay up past his bedtime.
Tommy sat in his oversized high chair, staring at me with pale blue eyes. Mrs. Henderson left around 6 p.m. The first few hours were fine. Tommy watched his shows and ate his dinner without fuss. During cartoons, I caught him chuckling and singing along, despite having hardly uttered a word to me the whole time. I sat down on the couch, texting my boyfriend when I looked up and found Tommy staring at me. His gaze had this eccentric look, like he wasn't 8 but 18.
What? Do you need anything?
He didn't answer, just clapped like a baby and said,
boo-boo, boo-boo.
I frowned in annoyance, seeing a big boy mimicking a baby. Some mothers just love spoiling their kids, I thought. Suddenly, he started getting agitated, rocking back and forth, making those gurgling noises. He started throwing his food around the floor. When I couldn't stop him, I used the only way known.
Wanna watch Coco Melon, Tommy?
His eyes lit up immediately, and for a second, I was convinced I was being unnecessarily paranoid. I found a playlist of lullabies and hit play. The familiar cartoon baby appeared on the huge flat-screen TV, singing in that high-pitched voice. Within 20 minutes, Tommy was asleep in his chair. I tucked him in his crib and closed the door. The house drowned in peaceful quiet. I grabbed myself a popsicle and sat down to watch TV. An hour might have passed, but when I heard the faint Coco Melon lullaby playing softly upstairs, I didn't see any device in Tommy's room. So how come Coco Melon is playing upstairs? I climbed the stairs slowly. The nursery door was cracked open. Through the gap, I could see Tommy sitting up in his crib, rocking side to side in the dark. He was singing along to music that had no sense of being there.
Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock.
I pushed the door open wider. Tommy turned to look at me, still rocking. His eyes reflected the hallway like an animal's. When he smiled, his mouth stretched impossibly wide, imitating the cartoon characters he watched.
Ruby's awake,
he said, licking his lips.
Tommy wants Ruby asleep.
My hand shook as I flipped on the light.
Tommy, you should be in bed.
Tommy is in bed,
he giggled.
Ruby should come play. Grandma won't be here for hours and hours.
His eyes were hypnotizing. He knew exactly when his grandmother was coming back. Mrs. Henderson had been lying about his condition.
I think you need to go back to sleep,
I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Tommy climbed out of his crib with fluid-controlled motions.
Tommy doesn't want to sleep. Tommy wants to play games. Fun games.
I shrieked and stumbled as Tommy crawled toward me like a spider. His eyes were hypnotizing.
Does Ruby want to play hide and seek? Tommy loves hide and seek. The last babysitter loved it too.
The last babysitter?
His smile got wider.
She's still playing. Want to see where she's hiding?
I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut behind me. Tommy giggled, and it sounded like the Coco Melon baby laugh played in reverse.
Don't leave, Ruby. Tommy gets lonely when Mama's gone. Tommy gets angry.
He grabbed a stuffed animal from his toy box and tore its head off, spilling its stuffing all over the place.
Tommy did that to the last babysitter too. She didn't complain. Want to see?
He pointed under his crib. In the shadows, I could make out what looked like a head of a woman resting on the floorboard. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and blinked at me. I lunged for the window, but Tommy moved faster than any child should. His small hands grabbed my ankle with impossible strength.
Stay and play, Ruby. Tommy likes you. We can watch Coco Melon together. Forever and ever.
His grip tightened, and I felt something sharp dig into my skin. His fingernails had grown into claws. I kicked as hard as I could, connecting with his face. He let go with a shriek that sounded demonic. I grabbed the desk chair and smashed the window, cutting my arms as I climbed through. I fell into the bushes below and ran to my car, not looking back until I was 3 blocks away. When I finally caught my breath, I called the police. They gave me a chilling backstory about the house. Months back, a mother and her young son lived there. She was no ordinary woman. People whispered she practiced rituals, using her own child as a medium to cure sickness. They said she would summon dark spirits and latch them inside the boy's body, forcing him to endure their torment. Neighbors often heard his screams piercing the night, cries so raw they rattled the walls. To muffle the horror, the mother would play a soft lullaby, her voice drifting through the house until the child's wailing quieted. But one night, it wasn't the boy who screamed, it was her. By the time neighbors rushed inside, she was sprawled on the floor, lifeless, her eyes gouged out as if ripped by unseen hands. The boy was gone, vanished into the darkness, never to be seen again.
I was 11 when Dad got transferred and we ended up in the quiet corner of Santa Fe. It wasn't bad, just extremely hush-hush. It was a Halloween night and I was out with my friends Mateo and Asher, hitting porch after porch until our pillowcases were dragging. By 9, the little kids had cleared out. The streets were quiet as we ducked into the park to sort through our haul before heading home. "Bro, the one with the full-size Snickers is king." Mateo grinned, already halfway through his second. "He ain't king until we hit every house," I said, nodding toward the one across the park. It sat alone without any jack-o'-lanterns or cobwebs, just dark windows and a porch that looked like it hadn't seen a visitor in years. Asher shuddered. "Ugh, Fred lives there. Nobody goes there." "Why not?" "You don't know?" Mateo leaned in, lowering his voice like he was about to spill state secrets. "Fred's wife vanished a year back. Most folks think he buried her." "What? Why?" "Susie was stunning and sweet, but way out of Fred's league. He knew that, and it ate at him. Always accused her of messing around with the mailman. Then one night, he did something horrible to her, and nobody ever saw her again." "What did he do?" "Not sure. Town people say Fred went full crazy and took an axe to her. Split her clean in half. Neighbors saw blood smeared on the windows and called it in, but when they searched the place top to bottom, they couldn't find anything. Fred swore she ran off with some guy," Asher added. I laughed and shook my head. "That's bullshit. If the cops searched his house and found nothing, then nothing happened. It's just some made-up spook story." "I'm serious," Asher insisted. "Everyone knows Fred did it to her. Why do you think no one talks to him anymore?" "Okay, fine. If you really believe that story, let's go trick-or-treat at his house." Mateo looked nervous. I stood up and started walking toward Fred's house. "Come on, don't be babies." Up close, the house was worse. The paint was flaking off while the shutters dangled like broken limbs, and the smell was coming from somewhere that reminded me of the time a mouse died in our garage wall. I jabbed the doorbell before my nerves could talk me out of it. A few seconds later, Fred showed up. He was a very tall man with strong build. He had hairs that touched his shoulders and a creepy stare. He had this axe in his hand that looked pretty rusted. Fred definitely looked scary. "Trick or treat," I fumbled, holding up my bag. He smiled slowly, then said in a deep voice, "Oh, of course. Let me get you something special." He turned and vanished into the house, leaving the door half open. We waited. The porch light buzzed overhead, and I could feel my smug little grin about proving Asher and Mateo wrong. Fred smelled weird and looked like he hadn't done laundry since last winter, but he was taking a really long time, like way longer than it takes to grab some candy from a bowl. "What's he doing in there?" Mateo whispered. Before I could answer, we heard Fred's low, muffled voice. He was talking to someone, but there wasn't supposed to be anyone else in that house, right? Maybe his wife didn't leave after all. I nervously chuckled. Asher crept closer to the door and peeked inside. His face went white. "Guys, you need to see this." We crowded around the doorway and peeped into Fred's living room. We could only see a portion of the room where we could spot a dining table with lit candles and plates. Fred came back a minute later, carrying 3 king-size chocolate bars, the expensive kind that usually cost like $5 each. "Here you go, boys," he said, handing them out. "Enjoy." "Thanks," we mumbled, but Mateo couldn't help himself. "Are you having a party or something? We saw your table." Fred's smile got wider. "Oh, that's for Susie and me. We're having a special dinner tonight." I felt my stomach drop. "Susie?" "Yes, she's been waiting for me to start eating. Very patient woman." Fred chuckled. "Would you boys like to meet her?" Before we could answer, he pulled the door wide open so we could see the whole dining room. Sitting at the far end of the table was a woman. She was wearing this fancy dress and had makeup caked on so thick it looked like a ski mask. but instead of her eyes, there were just empty sockets filled with something dark and moving. I squinted a little, and what I saw made the supper swirl in my stomach. The sockets were full of maggots. Her skin was gray and stretched too tight over her bones, and her mouth was sewn shut with thick black thread. But the worst part was her smell. It was sweet and rotten, like fruit left out in the sun for weeks. "Isn't she beautiful?" Fred cooed. "Just as gorgeous as the day I married her. She never ages, never complains, never tries to leave me for other men." We screamed, loud enough to wake up half the neighborhood as we bolted faster than we'd ever run in our lives, across the park and down the street until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. When we were almost near my house, we stopped to breathe. Asher and Mateo were staring at me with horror. I couldn't believe what just happened either. We never told anyone what we saw. Who would believe us? And like Asher said, even if we called the cops, Fred would probably just hide the body somewhere else by the time they got there. Hell, he'd done it before. I threw away that chocolate bar without even opening it. My friends did the same.
I'll never forget the summer the GTA 6 trailer dropped. Everyone was talking about it, rewatching it 100 times and speculating about every little detail. But for my friend Tyler, it became something else entirely. See, most of us just laughed at the chaos, the neon lights, and the wild stunts. Tyler, he locked on to Jason, the male protagonist in the trailer. And I don't mean he liked the character. I mean, he became him. At first, it was harmless. He started dressing like Jason, practicing the same cold expressions in the mirror when he thought no one was watching. He hit the beach gym every night, lifting under the orange glow of the pier lights, pretending he was training for something. We teased him about it. He'd laugh along at first, shrugging it off, but it was clear he wasn't enjoying the joke. With each week, Tyler drowned in his dark, imaginative world. By July, he stopped talking about anything else. Jason wouldn't waste time, he'd mutter, or Jason always finishes what he starts. It was weird, but we told ourselves it was just an obsession. Everyone has a phase, right? I wish that was all it was. It happened on a humid night by the pier. The sand was damp from the tide, the air sticky and heavy. A few of us were hanging around, spotting each other on the outdoor benches and bars, drinking and talking trash. Tyler was there too, dead silent, repping weight plates like he was possessed. His arms looked almost alien in the dim light, veins snaking up, muscles twitching with every lift. His eyes would go wide like he was seeing something in the oblivion. I thought to tease him a little. "Careful, man, you're starting to look more like Jason than Tyler." He beamed, like it was some compliment. I teased him a bit more, thinking it's harmless. "But Jason still gets the girls, unlike you." Everyone joined me for a laugh, but Tyler just set the weight plate down and stared at me. I should have stopped right there, but I didn't. I grinned, reached out, and patted him on the shoulder, saying, "Face it, bro, you're just a wannabe in a game that'll never drop." Our laughter grew louder. Tyler got up and faced me. I braced myself for a shove, maybe a swing, but instead, he hugged me. At first, I thought it was some weird joke. His chin pressed against my shoulder and I felt his breath against my ear, but he didn't let go. His arms tightened around me. His grip got uncomfortably strong. Then, he began whispering in my ears. I couldn't make out the words, just a fast, steady stream of sound, like some ancient mantra. Dude?" I laughed nervously. "You good?" Suddenly, his hands slid upward. His thumbs pressed into my throat. I froze, disbelief rooting me in place. The pressure built in my windpipe and I gagged. I tried to push him back, but his grip was like steel. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. My knees buckled in the wet sand. I could hear myself choking, rasping. "Tyler! What are you doing?" His face hovered inches from mine, blank,
focused. It was as if he wasn't even seeing me. He was merely following a script in his head. His eyes didn't look human. They looked evil.
Help! Guys! I can't!
Panic surged. My friends rushed forward, grabbing at him, yelling for him to let go. But Tyler didn't even flinch. It was like trying to peel a machine off of me. My chest burned, every vein in my head screaming. I thought, this is it. Tyler's going to kill me. My own friend.
Tyler, stop! Are you crazy?
Let go of him, Tyler!
My friends were screaming while trying their best to separate us. My eyes went black. I could feel myself fading into darkness. My eyes suddenly went to the sand on the ground. Something primal kicked in. My hand shot into the wet sand beside me. I scooped up a fistful and shoved it into Tyler's eyes.
Ah! My eyes!
For the first time, he reacted. He jerked back, gasping, blinking furiously. The hands around my throat loosened, and I collapsed onto the ground, sucking air like I'd been drowning. Two of the guys grabbed Tyler by the arms, dragging him backward as he thrashed and snarled. I'll never forget that sound. Half growl, half scream, like he was furious we'd interrupted something sacred.
I won't tolerate this! Don't test me!
We pulled away from each other, all of us panting, eyes wide. Tyler's chest heaved, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He looked less like a person and more like an animal. And then, just like that, he went still. He ripped free from their grip, straightened his jacket, and walked away. No words, no glance back, just vanished into the darkness under the pier. We haven't seen Tyler since then. I know how that sounds. If I hadn't lived it, I'd think it was an exaggeration, some overblown story meant to freak people out. But the truth is, sometimes people break. And when they do, it doesn't look like madness. It looks like obsession sharpened into something lethal. The cops couldn't find him. His parents said he left everything behind. Phone, wallet, even his bed sheets. Just gone. Like he'd shed Tyler entirely and stepped into Jason's skin. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. On quiet evenings, when the wind shifts just right through the palm trees by my window, I swear I can still hear his voice. That low, steady whisper right by my ear. The same one I couldn't make out that night. And I can't shake this thought. When GTA 6 finally drops, when the world ultimately gets to play Jason, Tyler will come back. Not to play the game. He's coming back to prove that he was never just pretending.
I swear on everything, what I'm about to tell you is real. I wish it wasn't. Honestly, I wish I'd never taken that damn shortcut through the alley. It was almost midnight when I was walking home. The streets were empty, just my sneakers tapping against the cracked sidewalk. I was walking past the dumpster when I saw something sticking out from the pile of garbage bags. At first, I thought it was just trash, but looking carefully, I realized it was a toy. Not just any broken toy, but the recently viral one, Labubu. Its fur was dirty, brownish, and matted, like it had been soaked in rain for days. Every bone in my body told me to keep walking, but for some reason, call it curiosity, call it stupidity, I reached in and grabbed it. The fur felt greasy, like touching wet carpet. I actually gagged, but I tucked it under my arm and kept moving. This weird vibe from the Labubu's glassy eyes didn't let me ignore it. When I got home, my phone buzzed. I answered without thinking, and my best friend Kayla's roommate started crying over the phone.
Steph, Kyla's gone. The plane, it crashed. What?
My brain just shut down. Kayla, my ride or die since middle school, my other half, gone. Just like that. I don't remember much after that. I locked my door, threw my phone somewhere, and cried until my chest hurt. At some point, I passed out hugging my pillow.
I don't recall the time, but I woke up to this faint sound, like a giggle. Initially, I thought I must have left my laptop open, playing some silly TikTok video. But no, my room was dark and dead silent. The laugh took place again. Slowly, I turned my head. The Labubu doll was sitting on my nightstand, but I swear I hadn't put it there. Its glassy eyes glimmered in the dark, and its mouth moved. The stitches were stretching, pulling apart like wet fabric, and then, in this voice that sounded like broken glass scraping against metal, it whispered, "Steffi, wanna play?" I screamed, but no sound came out. My throat locked up. I tried to get up, but my body felt heavy, pinned down. The doll twitched, one jerk, then another. Then it flung itself off the nightstand and landed on the floor with a sickening thud. Its limbs were bent wrong, like broken sticks, but it crawled, fast, straight toward me.
Don't be sad. You'll see her soon.
I kicked at it, finally finding my voice.
Get the hell away!
But the doll began to grow bigger. Right in front of me, it started stretching, bones cracking, fur ripping, and body twisting like some nightmare origami. Within seconds, it wasn't a doll anymore. It was a giant, its head scraping the ceiling, claws carving into the walls like paper. Its grin was now jagged, splitting its face wide open. I stumbled off the bed, backing into the corner. My heart felt like it was going to explode.
She's waiting for you, Steffi.
It growled, voice echoing like 100 ravenous dogs layered together.
See you on the other side.
Grinding its monster teeth, the Labubu lunged at me. Its claws slashed at my chest. I screamed as blood sprayed across the floor. I tried to run, but the Labubu grabbed me by my leg and kept pulling. I suffered like a tiny prey, trying my best to get away.
No exit, Steph!
The voice was right in my ear. I whipped around to see the giant Labubu standing over me. My chest rose and fell like I was suffocating. It slowly bent down to my level, bringing its face inches from mine. Its breath smelled like rotten meat.
She screamed when the plane fell, Steffi. Do you want to scream too?
My whole body went cold.
Let go of me!
I sobbed, slamming my fists against its chest. It laughed, the sound splitting my skull. Then it stabbed its claw straight through me. The pain was so real, so sharp, I thought I actually died. I gasped and woke up. I shot up in bed, drenched in sweat, my heart beating like a drum. My chest hurt, but there was no wound. For a second, I thought it was all a nightmare, just a dream. But then, I saw the Labubu doll, sitting perfectly on my nightstand, facing me, smiling. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The second the sun came up, I grabbed that thing with shaking hands, stuffed it in a bag, and bolted out of my apartment. I didn't even care if people thought I was crazy. I ran straight back to that alley and threw the bag into the same dumpster. As I was heading back, I turned one last time to the alley behind me, but instead of the Labubu, I saw a girl. She was standing near the dumpster with curious eyes, and it all felt like deja vu for a moment.
No.
I whispered, sprinting forward. She reached in, pulled out the Labubu, and hugged it like she'd found a treasure. She walked away with it.
Hey! Drop it!
I screamed, waving my arms like a maniac. She stopped while crossing the road and looked back at me, confused. And then, bam! A bus came out of nowhere, horn blaring too late. It slammed into her. The sound. I'll never get it out of my head. She flew, hit the pavement, and didn't move again. The doll rolled out of her arms, landing in the gutter. I couldn't breathe. People rushed over, screaming, calling 911. I just froze there. From that moment on, I knew the truth. Labubu isn't just some creepy toy. It's cursed. I saw death follow it twice with my own eyes. First Kayla, then that poor girl. Maybe it chooses people. Maybe it feeds on us. I don't know. All I know is that I won't touch it again.
And if you ever see one lying around, don't pick it up. Run. Just run.
I work at a marketing firm in Portland, and every Tuesday, I pick up my 4-year-old niece, Olivia, from daycare. My sister Jess is a single mom and pulls double shifts at the hospital, so I help out when I can. Olivia is this tiny ball of energy who's absolutely obsessed with Cocomelon videos. That particular Tuesday was warm and sunny, with perfect park weather. Olivia had been begging to go to Riverside Park all week, and I, for once, obliged. I needed to decompress anyway, after the hellish morning I'd had with client presentations. The playground was packed with the usual mix of exhausted parents and screaming kids. Olivia bolted straight for the swings, already humming a Cocomelon song under her breath. I found a spot on a nearby bench and pulled out my phone to catch up on emails.
Look, I'm flying, Aunt Sarah!
Olivia called out, pumping her little legs in the swing. I smiled at her and was about to dart back to the screen when I heard someone humming Cocomelon. I looked over and saw a man sitting at the end of the same bench. I didn't see him when I sat down, hence had no idea when he got here. He wore some faded khaki pants and a button-down shirt. At first glance, he looked like every other suburban dad at the park. But then he moved closer, saying, "Cute kid."
Thanks.
I couldn't put my finger on what, but my instincts blared an alarm in his presence. He started dangling his feet just like Olivia. "Cocomelon's the best, isn't it? My buddy JJ and I watch it together all the time. He's such a good kid. Always listens to Uncle Mark." I froze. Uncle Mark? Wasn't JJ a cartoon character? "JJ loves the playground episodes," the man went on, eyeing Olivia with this unsettling grin. "He's always so happy when he gets to play with new friends, especially little girls with dark hair like that." He pointed at Olivia. My stomach dropped. The way he said little girls made my skin crawl. I immediately grabbed Olivia and took her to one of the slides instead, far away from the guy. For a while, everything was normal. Olivia was mingling with the other kids, running around, while I followed her everywhere with my eyes. I looked back at that bench, and the man was gone. But then my phone rang. It was my boss, freaking out about a lost file from a server malfunction. I answered, and turned slightly away from the playground to hear better over the kids' screaming. The call lasted maybe 2 minutes. When I turned back around, my heart stopped. Olivia wasn't anywhere to be seen. I scanned the playground frantically. Slides, monkey bars, sandbox. My hands were shivering. Where could she be?
Aunt Sarah!
A tiny muffled sob came from the parking lot, and every hair on my body stood in alarm. I squinted at the cars before I spotted him.
Olivia!
That Cocomelon creep was walking quickly toward the street, dragging Olivia along the way. Her tiny hand was gripped in his much larger one. She was crying, stumbling to keep up with his long strides, and looking back toward the playground with panic in her eyes. I ran, faster than I've ever run in my life, my legs pumping so hard I thought my heart would explode. Olivia saw me coming and started thrashing at him as they neared his car with black tinted windows.
Hey, stop, you freak! Help! Help!
The man looked back and saw me charging toward them. He hurriedly threw Olivia in the back seat and was about to jump in the driver's seat when I tackled him from behind. The two of us went down in a tangle. Olivia scrambled out, sobbing hysterically, while I clawed at his arms and face like a wild animal. "Hey now, calm down," he chuckled, as if the whole ordeal amused him. "JJ and I were just going to go home and watch some videos. You can come along too." He was looking at Olivia, toe to head, and licked his lips.
My name is Olivia! I want to go home!
She screamed through her tears. "Don't be silly," he said, trying to reach for her again, even with me on top of him. "You're JJ. I know you are. I've been watching you play here every Tuesday for 3 weeks. You love the playground, just like in the episodes. 3 weeks? He'd been stalking my niece for 3 weeks, learning her schedule and planning this. Other parents had noticed the commotion and were running over. Someone was already on the phone with 911. 2 fathers grabbed the man and held him down while I pulled Olivia into my arms. "This isn't over," he said calmly as we waited for the police, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "JJ and Uncle Mark are meant to be together. I have all his favorite episodes saved in my computer. Uncle Mark loves little girls, like you." When the cops arrived, they searched his phone and found exactly what he described. Dozens of downloaded Cocomelon episodes. But worse than that were the photos. Hundreds of pictures of children at different playgrounds around the city. All the little girls are around Olivia's age. They charged him with attempted kidnapping and stalking, but the damage was already done. Olivia hasn't watched Cocomelon since that day. She has nightmares about Uncle Mark coming to take her away. She won't even go to playgrounds anymore without having panic attacks. And me? I can't stop thinking about how normal he looked. How he could have been any of the other dads at that park. How he knew exactly when to take advantage of one distraction. I don't even want to think about what he'd do to the kids if he abducted them. He's in jail now, but there are others like him out there who wear friendly faces and call themselves uncle as they plan to execute the unthinkable.
I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. Lori had called in sick earlier, but then management texted me last minute to cover her late shift. I was annoyed, but I needed the hours, so I dragged myself through rain, windshield wipers slapping uselessly against the downpour, and pulled into the Five Guys parking lot. The storm was already fierce, hammering against the glass doors, the lot shining with black puddles. Inside, the place felt like a hollow shell, fluorescent lights buzzing, grills hissing softly, and the red and white tiles reflecting the storm outside. Gina was at the register, half asleep from boredom.
Rough night to be here.
She said, giving me a tired smile. The rain pounded against the window so hard I thought the glass might crack. Customers trickled out one by one until it was just us, Gina and me, wiping down counters, checking the fryers, and trying to stay awake until close. At around 9:30, Gina started locking up. She went to secure the side door, then walked to the back windows. But suddenly, she stopped, staring at something, or maybe someone. I saw her shoulders tense, her head cocked to the side.
Lori?
She said softly. I frowned.
What?
Then, I saw her too. Standing just inside the doorframe, dripping wet, pale as the lightning flashing outside. Lori. Her Five Guys uniform clung to her like a second skin, her hair plastered against her skull. She smiled, but it was weird, too wide, too stiff. Her lips didn't seem to match her eyes.
I came back.
She said, her voice flat and distant.
Car broke down nearby. Figured I'd finish the shift.
For a moment, relief surged through me. Maybe she hasn't been sick at all. Maybe she just wanted to make sure she didn't lose her hours. But as I looked at her closer, that relief curdled into something colder. Her movements were jerky and unnatural, as if she were a puppet someone was still learning to control. She dragged her feet slightly, leaving thin trails of water across the tile. And that smile, it stayed fixed, unblinking, like it had been carved into her face.
You okay?
Lori tilted her head.
Never better. Feels like all my problems are gone.
A chill ran down my spine.
What?
She stepped closer. I swear, the lights dimmed with her movement. Her wet clothes didn't drip anymore. The water just seemed to vanish into the floor.
You didn't cover for me.
She whispered, her voice suddenly much lower, rasping like it came from somewhere deep in her chest.
I covered for myself.
Gina backed away.
Tamara, something's wrong.
The air grew heavy, pressing against my lungs. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, reaching for us like grasping hands. Then, with a harsh snap, the light shattered, spreading glass everywhere. In the darkness, I heard Lori's voice, closer.
Sorry for being late.
The lights from the window, along with the sudden lightning, transported the restaurant into another world, and I noticed Lori standing right in front of me. Lori wasn't solid anymore. Her body shimmered like smoke, her face pale to the point of translucence. Her eyes were hollow, glowing faintly from within.
Lori?
I whispered, though I wasn't sure why. She gave me that same stiff smile.
I had an accident.
Suddenly, the storm outside howled louder, rattling the building. The windows slammed shut on their own. Gina screamed and ran for the back. I stumbled, my heart hammering as Lori drifted closer. Her face twisted, her smile warping into something pained, furious, and broken.
I died on that road.
I tried to move, but my legs felt like stones.
Blood on my hands. Glass in my skin. And no one came. No one helped.
She floated closer, the glow from her wide eyes reflecting in the dark. Her fingers twitched, reaching for me. They weren't fingers anymore. Not really. They stretched too long, thin as wires, trembling with rage.
You didn't hear me scream, Tamara. Nobody did.
I choked on air.
You're not real. You're not.
Her head snapped to the side unnaturally, the bones cracking like breaking sticks. She screamed.
I'm here!
The sound reverberated through me, rattling my teeth. Loud thunder cracked outside. That was enough to break me free. I bolted for the door, shoving past the unseen wind that clawed at me. My hands fumbled with the lock, but somehow it gave way, and I spilled into the storm outside. The rain hit me like ice water, soaking me instantly. The storm howled, but it wasn't as loud as the wail echoing from the restaurant. Lori's voice, stretched and broken, chasing me into the night. I sprinted across the lot, my sneakers slipping on wet pavement, lungs burning. And then I found her car at the edge of the lot, right by the road. At least, what was left of it. The windshield was shattered, glittering shards scattered across the asphalt. The front of the car was crushed inward, the bonnet crumpled like foil. Steam hissed from the mangled engine. I should have kept running. I should have never looked inside. But I did. Through the broken glass, illuminated by flashes of lightning, I saw her, Lori. Her body was slumped against the steering wheel, uniform stained dark with blood. Her skull was split open, brains spilling across her Five Guys uniform. One eye was gone, the other stared blankly, lifeless. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. Then, her head moved. Snapping up with a sickening crunch, her ruined face turned toward me. As her lips drew into that rigid, overly broad smile, blood trickled down her chin. Lightning cracked overhead.
I told you.
She rasped. Her mutilated hand twitched against the window, fingers dragging across the glass in slow, deliberate lines. I screamed and ran, the storm swallowing me whole. But her words followed me, stuck in my skull, replaying over and over. After that night, I left my job at Five Guys. Gina called 911, who took away Lori and investigated her accident. I didn't follow up. I want to forget that night and everything that happened. But I do hope she finds peace. I've been collecting horror stuff for 15 years. And yet, to date, nothing has ever hit me like the Freddy Fazbear animatronic I bought at Grimwood Auctions last month. 7 feet tall, matted fur, creepy as hell. The Fazbear was perfect for my farmhouse collection.
Just a heads up, man. That thing's got a bad history. Came from a pizza place that shut down right after they bought it.
The auction guy told me as we signed the papers. I laughed.
They all have stories. Help sell them, right? 12 grand later, Freddy was mine. The delivery guys had trouble getting it through my front door. The thing was heavier than it looked. We wedged it into the corner of my living room by the window somehow, where it sat through the day with its mouth hung open and this permanent grin, and those eyes that seemed to follow you around. That evening, a storm hit. Heavy rain hammered the windows. Wind tore through the trees. By dinner, I'd lost cell service. The isolation didn't bother me, though. It was part of the reason why I had bought the house in the first place. Around midnight, a loud crash woke me up. Sounded like a tree fell, but as I listened, something felt wrong. The house had gone dead quiet despite the storm outside. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and went downstairs. The living room looked different. It took me a second to realize why. When I did, my stomach dropped. The chair where Freddy sat was empty. I swept the flashlight around, looking for where it fell. Some old animatronics have backup battery packs that can last for hours. Maybe the storm triggered something and it moved a few steps. Before I could figure it out, I heard music from the hallway. Happy Birthday played in tinny mechanical tones, but skipping notes. "Who's there?" I said, then felt stupid for talking to myself. I followed the sound down the hall. As I turned the corner, a shiver ran down my spine. Freddy Fazbear was standing upright, staring at me with those glassy eyes that now seemed alive. Hey, buddy!
It screeched in a glitched voice. I ran for the front door, and it slammed shut before I reached it, hard enough to shake the frame. The deadbolt turned by itself with a sharp click. Behind me, heavy footsteps thudded on the floor. The thing was coming after me. I ducked into the kitchen and crouched behind the island, trying to breathe quietly. This was insane. Animatronics don't just walk around. There had to be an explanation, but I couldn't think of one. Freddy found me in the kitchen. That broken song played on repeat.
Happy birthday to happy birth.
Suddenly, the kitchen lights flickered twice. Then, the bulbs exploded. My flashlight threw crazy shadows on the wall. I heard whirring sounds of gears turning. I peeked around the edge. The animatronic stood in the doorway, with its arms raised at weird angles. Its head tilted sideways too far. Its jaw opened and closed in jerky movements. It took one lurching step forward, then another. I pressed against the cabinet, trying to disappear. The thing was 6 feet away now. I could smell old fabric and machine oil. Its head turned left and right, scanning like it was hunting. Then, it looked down, and its eyes locked onto mine. Its jaw snapped shut with a metallic clang that echoed in the small space as it lunged at me. One massive claw hand swept across the counter, sending dishes crashing. I rolled sideways as its other hand slammed down where my head had been, leaving deep scratches in the wooden island. "Stay away!" I yelled. Freddy got more violent. The mechanical sounds got louder and more aggressive. I scrambled through the back door, but it beat me there. Its claws raked across my shoulder, tearing through my shirt and cutting skin. The pain was searing, but fear kept me moving. I stumbled toward the door in the dark. That broken melody started up again, but now there was mechanical laughter with it, like a broken carnival ride. The last thing I remember was falling backward, my legs giving out from terror. My head hit something hard and everything went black. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. My neighbors found me during a welfare check after the storm cleared. I had a bad concussion, dehydration, and cuts that needed stitches. The police said it looked like vandalism. Kids probably broke in during the power outage. My house was a wreck. Furniture was overturned, and Freddy was gone, along with some other valuable pieces. I didn't correct them. How do you tell cops that a soulless robot tried to kill you? How do you explain to them that you found the backup battery pack later in your garage that was supposed to be torn out of Freddy's chest cavity? Cables ripped clean off? The thing is, that battery was dead, completely drained, had been for months according to the date sticker. So how did Freddy move without power?
The police report mentioned strange electrical activity during the storm. Lightning struck the power lines 3 times that night. Maybe some kind of surge got into the house wiring, into Freddy's circuits. I don't know. What I do know is that the animatronic disappeared that night and never turned up. Not in pawn shops, online, or anywhere else. The insurance paid out, but I never bought another collectible. Sometimes, late at night, I hear that broken melody in the distance, faint, like it's coming from far away. I tell myself it's just the wind, or maybe a neighbor's music box. But I installed security cameras after that, and motion sensors too, because part of me wonders if that thing is still out there somewhere, waiting for another storm to knock the power out, waiting for the lights to go dark again. And if it comes back, I'll be ready this time.
I was 15, visiting my grandparents for the week before Halloween in Granger Hollow. It was this small town in the middle of nowhere, but my cousin Evan acted like he knew the place like the back of his hand, and had been hyping up this harvest fair all week. On Halloween night, we walked to the fairgrounds on the edge of town. The place was lit up with flickering torches and strings of orange lights. It cast everything in this eerie glow. The air was thick with smoke from bonfires and the smell of hay and spiced cider. I have to admit, the atmosphere was pretty sick. There were booths selling weird trinkets, hay rides through fake graveyards, and people in the most insane costumes I'd ever seen. Evan immediately ditched me to hit on some girls dressed as Disney princesses while I wandered around by myself, checking out the games and stuff. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and nearly jumped out of my skin. Standing behind me was this clown straight out of a nightmare. His costume was faded and patchy, like it had been rotting in someone's basement for decades. The makeup was thick and cracked, with this painted-on smile that was way too wide, while his eyes were these pale blue things that seemed to track the number of times I blinked. He was holding out a piece of candy, some kind of corn syrup thing wrapped in clear plastic, but the wrapper was covered in cat hair and dust, like he'd pulled it out of a garbage can. "Want some candy, kiddo?" he offered, grinning. I looked at the nasty candy and then back at his face. The vibe around him made my skin crawl. "No thanks," I said, backing away. He didn't say anything else, just stood there holding out that gross candy as I turned and walked away as fast as I could. I found Evan by the haunted house. He was still trying to impress those princess girls. "Dude, there's this really creepy clown over by the games. Like, seriously messed up."
A clown? That's probably just Friendo.
One of the girls giggled.
He's like the town legend or whatever. Used to be the mascot of this syrup factory that closed down years ago.
"He's harmless, bro," Evan said, not even looking at me. "Just some old weirdo in a costume." But as we moved through the fair, I kept seeing him in my peripheral vision. He was behind the apple bobbing booth 1 second, and next, I spotted him standing next to the hayride or lurking by the bonfire. Every time I looked directly at him, he'd vanish. But each time I tell Evan, he'd just laugh and shrug. "There!" I grabbed Evan's arm and pointed. "See? By the corn maze entrance. He's giving me the creeps, Evan." Evan followed my finger and saw Friendo standing there, still as a statue, staring right at us. "All right, 'cause you're my cousin," Evan scoffed as he picked up a rock from the ground. "Hey, Friendo! Catch!" He hurled it at the clown. I watched it smack right into his forehead. Blood immediately started running down his face, mixing with the white makeup. Friendo didn't scream or wince. He didn't even touch the wound. He just stared at us for another few seconds, letting the blood soak his clothes before he walked back into the crowd. "Holy shit, Evan. Why did you do that? Relax, he'll be fine." But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just made a huge mistake. By midnight, the fair was winding down. Most of the families had gone home, leaving just teenagers and drunk adults stumbling around. Evan finally got bored trying to impress girls, and we decided to head back to my grandma's house. Instead of taking the main road, Evan insisted we cut through the cornfield behind the fairgrounds. "It's faster," he said. The fog had rolled in thick, making it hard to see more than a few feet in any direction. The corn stalks towered over our heads, rustling in the wind. We were maybe halfway through when we heard the laughter, raspy and broken, like someone gargling glass. It echoed through the field from somewhere behind us.
Did you hear that?
I whispered. Evan stopped walking. Yeah. The laughter came again, closer this time. We turned around, and I saw a shape moving through the fog. He was tall and wrong, shambling towards us between the corn rows.
Friendo!
I gaped. The blood had dried black on his face, and he was carrying something that glinted in the moonlight. As he got closer, I could see it was an axe. The dark blade was something that definitely wasn't rust. His painted smile seemed even wider now, stretching impossibly across his face.
Run,
Evan breathed. We bolted through the corn, stalks whipping across our faces as we crashed through row after row. Behind us, Frendo's laughter got louder and more excited. He was enjoying this. I could hear him crashing through the corn behind us, that horrible giggling getting closer. My lungs were burning, and my legs felt like jello, but I kept running.
This way!
Evan grabbed my arm and yanked me to the right. We burst out of the cornfield and onto the main road, sprinting toward the streetlights of town. I looked back once and saw Frendo standing at the edge of the field, axe hanging at his side. He wasn't following us anymore. He just watched. The fog swirled around him like he was part of it. We ran all the way to my grandparents' house and locked every door and window. Spent the rest of the night huddled in the living room, jumping at every sound. My grandpa found us there in the morning, looking like we'd seen a ghost. When we told him what happened, his face went white.
"You boys stay away from the Harvest Festival from now on,"
he said quietly.
"Some traditions in this town are better left alone."
I never found out who Frendo really was or what happened to him after that night, but I know one thing for sure. I'm never spending another Halloween in Granger Hollow.
I'm 15 years old and a sophomore at Lincoln High in Portland. My sister Leela is 3 years older than me and has been making ASMR videos since she turned 15, starting with simple whispering and tapping sounds that somehow attracted thousands of subscribers. By the time she hit 18, she had over 1 million followers and was making enough money to help our parents with the mortgage. Leela made those mukbangs videos where she'd whisper while trying different cuisines, recording sounds that our viewers somehow found relaxing. I never understood the hype, but our parents were thrilled and acted like she'd made it big, which is why they didn't hesitate when she asked for a private studio in the basement and stopped eating with the family altogether. 6 months ago, she brought home a fluffy Siberian cat and some albino rats for aesthetics. Leela would stay locked up in the studio the whole time. When asked what she was working on, she'd get this distant look and say, "I'm developing content for a more dedicated audience." Her subscriber count was growing fast too. Within a month, she'd gone to over 3 million subscribers. But soon, the sounds started bothering me. I'd been hearing Leela's ASMR through the house for years, so I was used to the whispers and gentle eating noises. But these new sounds were different. The chewing was wetter and more aggressive. Sometimes I'd hear whimpers and tearing, like she was eating too aggressively. What kind of viewers enjoy this? One night, our parents had driven to Seattle for Dad's work conference, leaving me, Leela, and her pets alone for the weekend. Leela was excited about having the house to herself, said she had a special project planned that required complete privacy. I shrugged and disappeared into my room. A storm rolled in around midnight. The rain was pounding against my bedroom windows, and I was having trouble sleeping. That's when I started hearing the voices again. There were soft whimpers and slurping. I had to check. The studio door was open, and light was spilling up to the stairs. I could hear her soft giggles as the whimpers grew louder before fading away.
Little one, just a second longer.
I crept down the stairs just far enough to peep into the studio. What I saw has to literally be anyone's worst nightmare. Leela was kneeling in blood, knife in hand. Her arms and shirt were smeared. Skin and fur clung to her fingers like wet tissue. The camera was rolling, while the ring light cast a soft glow over the mess. The mutilated body of the cat was lying on the ground, and my sister was eating it. Raw meat dangled from her mouth as she chewed slowly, letting every squelch and crunch echo for her forum followers. "Leela?" I gasped, horrified. She flinched for a second, then slowly looked at me.
Jeremy,
Leela slurped, continuing to chew.
come taste the heaven.
"What?" I said, inching away.
Whoa, don't be afraid. See how much views I get from these videos? We're gonna be super rich soon.
I started backing up the stairs, but Leela was already moving toward me. Blood dripped from her mouth, while fresh meat hung loosely in between her fingers.
They've taught me so much, you know,
She said, crawling towards me.
about angles and flavors and slicing.
Who? I gulped.
The audience. Here, this one's fresh. You'd love it.
She held out one eyeball, hoping I'll join her in this madness. Every few seconds, she'd stop and giggle.
Don't be shy. Eat.
I'm alone in the house, and if I had to survive, I need to play along. I sat down beside her, my whole body shaking in disgust. I took the eyeball in my hand and immediately vomited on the floor. Leela laughed like a toddler, clapping her hands.
You're such a softie. Come on, try again.
Leela offered a chunk of meat this time, but I couldn't stand anymore. I bolted to the living room. I tried to head for the front door, but Leela was faster than I expected. She grabbed my arm and dragged me back. "Get off me! You've lost your brain cells! You're sick!" I screamed, thrashing my arms and legs blindly. Leela merely giggled, as if my panic amused her.
You used to believe in me. What happened? This is the only thing that's ever made me feel seen. I'm not crazy. I'm finally alive.
I bit on her hand to tear free and bolted toward the kitchen, heart hammering. Leela was right behind me. I grabbed a chair and shoved it between us. She stumbled, just enough for me to keep going. I sprinted down the hallway, right into our parents' bedroom. I reached for the lock, but she kicked the door with everything she had. It slammed into me, and we both went down hard. She landed on top. Her breath was hot and sour, and her eyes were wild. In her hand, she was still clutching the knife she had used on the cat.
We could have had better footage. You ruined it.
She muttered, dragging the blade across my cheek. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Terror had choked me clean. I could merely watch her raise the knife to silence my tremors forever. Just then, bright headlights swept across the bedroom window. Tires crunched gravel, and a car screeched to a halt in our driveway.
Jer, Lila, baby, we're home.
Mom called out. Our parents had returned earlier than expected. Taking advantage of her distraction, I hurriedly shoved Leela off and scrambled back, gasping like I'd just surfaced from drowning. Leela didn't chase me this time. She just sat there, knife still clutched in her hand, frozen and full of madness. When our parents discovered the truth, they were horrified. Leela now lives in a mental institution. Last time I visited her, she was talking to the walls. I can't even recognize my sister anymore. Her obsession to be seen in the internet didn't just ruin her. It ruined our entire family.
I don't even know why I agreed to it. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the sudden surge of adrenaline. Or maybe it was just the blind confidence that comes from thinking nothing bad ever happens to you when you're young.
It was past 2 a.m. when we stumbled out of the nightclub, half drunk, half awake, and fully reckless. My friend Mason jingled the keys of his dad's car, grinning like a devil.
Let's do it. GTA 6, baby. We'll recreate it tonight.
The others cheered, but my stomach sank. I knew the scene he was referring to. We'd all seen the trailer 100 times. The car driving at insane speed with a girl leaning out of the sunroof, arms raised, with a neon-lit city sprawling behind her. It looked wild. This is stupid, I muttered, but nobody heard me over the excitement. By the time we reached the highway, the music was blasting so loudly that it made the rearview mirror rattle. Emily had already crawled halfway out of the roof, her glittery dress catching every passing light. Her arms reached up into the night. Mason slammed the gas pedal and the car leapt forward, weaving between lanes.
Woohoo! We're legends!
Emily screamed, her hair whipping around in the wind. I tried pulling her back in. I even told Mason to slow down, but the group just kept laughing, as if it were our last night, insisting that we should make the most of it. A silver sedan swerved into our lane without signaling. Tires screeched, horns blared, and for a second, I saw us rolling, flipping end over end like a crumpled soda can. But somehow, Mason straightened the car.
Jesus Christ, guys, it's getting risky now. Please.
Emily whooped even louder.
Just like the trailer! Enjoy the fun!
At this point, my heart was hammering so hard it hurt. None of them listened to me. We were speeding like hell when a motorcycle appeared from nowhere. Its red taillight glowed like a warning flare. Mason swerved again. The car rocked so violently that Emily almost lost her grip on the roof. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm, yanking her back down just enough for her to steady herself. But she still didn't budge.
Relax, we're fine!
Fine? We weren't fine. We were seconds away from death. But I'm the only one who saw that. We continued on the road, dodging cars like it was a game. I felt like we were going to crash at any point because of how close we were with vehicles coming from the other side. Suddenly, two white beams cut straight through the darkness ahead. At first, they looked distant, but in seconds, they swelled larger and brighter, barreling straight toward us.
Mason! Mason!
I screamed, seeing the truck. Mason's hands jerked on the wheel. He hit the brakes and the car screeched, spinning in motion. The world became a blur of headlights and shadows. Everyone screamed, trying their best to grab the seats, but the impact was huge. My body slammed against the door so hard my ribs rattled. Somehow, by a miracle, we missed the truck, but the car skidded off the road and slammed into a tree. The crunch of metal and shatter of glass echoed into the night. We all ricocheted off the seat, and for a second, all went silent. A numb ringing blurred my vision. I thought we were dead, but a few seconds later, when I opened my eyes, I heard groans, coughs, and the hiss of an engine. Mason was clutching the wheel, blood streaking down his forehead. I was dazed, chest heaving, every nerve screaming. But Emily was still out of her mind. She climbed the roof.
What the hell are you doing?
She didn't answer. She jumped down onto the road, her heels chattering against the pavement. Her arms shot up again, triumphant, as though we hadn't just cheated death.
Fans of GTA 6 are invincible!
She cried, spinning in the middle of the highway under the neon glow of the distant city lights. Her laugh echoed, high-pitched and manic, like she was trying to prove something to the universe.
Emily, get back here!
I fumbled with my seatbelt, finally breaking free and stumbling out of the wreck.
Emily, please, get off the road!
But she didn't hear us, or maybe she didn't want to. She twirled and twirled, her dress glittering like some kind of beacon. Cars swerved in the distance, horns blaring in protest, but she only laughed louder.
I'm gonna live till the end, baby! GTA 6 fans are immortal!
She was going full bonkers.
I'm gonna live, and we're all...
I saw it before she did, bright headlights rushing her way.
Emily!
I screamed, my voice tearing from my throat. She turned, finally, just as the truck's headlights washed over her.
for a fraction of a second, I saw her smile falter, saw her arms lower, and saw the truth sink in. And then, she was run over. The sound was indescribable. It was a bone-crushing metallic roar that ripped the night apart. One moment she was there, alive, spinning, laughing. The next, she was gone. The truck didn't even stop. It just thundered into the darkness, leaving behind what was left of Emily. I dropped to my knees, the asphalt tearing into my skin. Mason convulsed with sobs. Our two other friends staggered toward me, their faces ghost pale, lips trembling. But all I could see was Emily's lifeless body lying on the road. Her head was split into two, with her arms and legs twisted like a rag doll. We sat there until the paramedics and cops arrived. Strangers gathered, and officers pulled us aside and asked what happened. But there were no words. Nothing could explain the madness of that night. Nothing could bring Emily back. All I could think about was that trailer scene, the one that looked so free, so alive, and how we tried to bring it to life, only to find out the truth. Video games reset when you crash. Real life doesn't.
Running a funeral home isn't glamorous. People think it's morbid, depressing work. And maybe they're right. But I've been around death long enough that it feels normal. Peaceful even. The dead don't scare me. They can't move, can't hurt you. At least, that's what I used to believe. It was a Tuesday morning when a young girl was brought in. She looked barely 12, drowned in her bathtub. Her father delivered the body himself, his face pale and hollow, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. When I unzipped the body bag, I found a Labubu toy tucked in her arms. She loved it too much. Never let it go. I was familiar with the hype of these dolls, so I recognized it immediately. The girl's face was bloated, like any other drowning victim. Her lips had this faint bluish tint. All her veins were extra visible under the pale, waterlogged skin. At the very first glance, she kind of unsettled me. The doll's grin only added to the discomfort. I brushed it off, cataloged her details, and set her in the basement's embalming room. Around midnight, I began my work. I work in the nights because it's the most peaceful time. The embalming table creaked under her weight as I arranged my tools. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a steady hum I'd grown used to. But that night, the silence of the room felt different. The air was thick and heavy. My eyes kept darting to the corners, convinced I saw shadows twitching. Every now and then, I heard faint dripping, as though water was leaking, but the taps were dry. And the doll? God damn that freaky Labubu. I set it on a stool beside the stretcher, but every time I glanced over, I swore its glass eyes weren't quite where I left them, like it was following me. Focus, I muttered, sliding on my gloves. It's just fatigue. Halfway into the process, I figured out I left my scalpel in the storage room, so I went to get it. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds, but when I came back, the stretcher was empty. The girl's body and the doll, both were gone. Chills rushed down my spine. All my muscles locked tight in an unknown fear. My stomach dropped like a stone. For a full minute, I just stood there, scalpel in hand, breath ragged. How is this even possible? The girl has been dead for hours. She can't just travel around. Suddenly, I noticed bloody footprints on the floor, and they were leading out of the embalming room. My heart hammered so hard, I thought I'd pass out. Slowly, against everything my instincts shouted, I followed. The prints led upstairs, one sticky step after another, until they disappeared into the kitchen. I gripped the doorframe, forcing myself to breathe. That's when I heard it. Clatter, scrape, thump. Someone was ravaging the kitchen in the middle of the night. My knees went weak. Every nerve told me to run, to leave the house and never come back. But my body moved anyway, dragging me forward. I turned the corner, and my blood froze. She was there, the drowned girl, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor in front of the open freezer, her wet hair hanging like seaweed across her face. She clutched a raw chicken leg in her little hands and tore into it with jagged bites. Strings of bloody flesh dangled from her mouth. The sound of her animalistic chewing filled the air. The scalpel dropped from my hand, hitting the cold floor. It made this subtle metallic clank, and she stopped chewing. Making this bone-cracking sound, she turned her head slowly. She faced me. Her eyes were filled with blood and glowing. Her lips curled into a grin. Her teeth and mouth were smeared with blood. Behind her, the doll leaned against the freezer door like it had life in it too. The evil bunny was grinning wider now. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All of a sudden, the girl opened her mouth, and in a voice that was wet and gurgling, she whispered,
Every night, I chew and I chew, but I still feel the water in my throat.
That broke me. I screamed, stumbled backwards, and collapsed against the counter. My vision swam, the world spinning as my chest clenched. My last memory was her crawling toward me on all fours, her hands smearing the floor with blood. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, morning light streamed through the basement window. I was lying on the embalming room floor. The girl was back on the stretcher, pale and lifeless, exactly as she'd been the night before. The doll rested neatly against her chest, its stitched grin as stiff as ever. I thought maybe it had been a nightmare, sleep deprivation, stress, something my mind conjured up. I got up to take a closer look at her face, and drops of sweat appeared on my forehead. In her mouth, between her teeth, hung shredded strands of raw chicken flesh. Even the Labubu toy had bloodstains on its crooked teeth. I staggered back, bile raising in my throat. My mind screamed, Leave! Leave now! But I couldn't. I couldn't abandon her body. The family trusted me. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I embalmed her like any other client, though my hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped my instruments. The whole time, I felt her eyes on me. Every so often, I thought she blinked at me. It's been 3 nights since then. I haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see her crouched in the kitchen, gnawing raw flesh, her dead eyes shining. I hear the Labubu doll laughing, whispering things I don't really understand. Yesterday, her father called me to invite me to her memorial. I didn't go. I said I was down with fever. I couldn't muster up the courage to see the girl again. I find it difficult to believe that her death was just a mere accident. I'm sure the Labubu doll has something to do with it.
Have you ever had that feeling in your gut like something's just off? Not the usual, I hate my job and wish I was dead kind of off, but that kind where the hairs on your arms start standing up like antenna. That's exactly how I felt that night at Five Guys. I was cleaning the fryer, all set to close and go home. I was exhausted, sweat clinging to my uniform, when the front door creaked open.
Tell me that's someone who forgot their wallet.
I muttered, turning toward the entrance. I could hear heavy footsteps approaching, but before I could see the customer, I noticed my coworker Louise. He was mopping behind the milkshake station, but now he stood frozen with a face as pale as a sheet. I immediately got that feeling of dread. Once I came out from the kitchen, I understood Louise's reaction. A man had stepped inside. He was limping like a broken toy. He wore a grease-stained clown outfit, 2 sizes too big, patched together with duct tape and something that looked like dried blood. His painted face grinned, lips cracked like old leather, revealing yellow teeth. The smeared red blush on his cheeks made him look like Captain Spaulding from the movie House of a Thousand Corpses. I hear the fries are here to die for.
He hissed, dragging a rusted crowbar across the floor tiles. Louise reached for his phone, but the clown raised the crowbar and announced,
What? You don't like clowns? Don't we make you laugh?
Louise froze again.
No calls, okay?
He cackled.
We're gonna play a fun little game tonight. Hide and shriek. Think of it as employee engagement activity.
I stood rooted to the floor, having no clue of how I'll get out of this situation, alive. He started rummaging through the counter, opening drawers and grabbing spatulas and ketchup bottles like they were sacred relics.
Tell me, Blondie, do you enjoy games?
I was terrified, but chose to stand my ground.
There are cameras here. The cops will find you, you know?
Cops!
He let out a wheezy chuckle.
Oh, sweet thing. If the cops had already caught me for the fun I had, I'd be sitting in the electric chair by now. Electric. Zzz.
He mimed electrocution, rolling his eyes back while taking his tongue out. I'd never seen anyone having such a red tongue. He turned on Louise then.
You, handsome. Got any meat back there? I've got a hankering for something rare. Really rare. Maybe a spleen burger. Eyeball sliders. Do I look like I have dietary restrictions?
He herded us toward the back with lazy swings of the crowbar. It wasn't random. He was performing, feeding off the fear he smeared all over the walls, like his smeared clown grease paint. We backed into the freezer area.
Clowns hate the cold, but I love a good screamsicle.
Luis was trembling. I could see him glancing toward the emergency exit, but I knew better. It'd been jammed for months. Every time we complained, management shrugged at us, saying, just keep it closed. Now, that laziness might get us killed. The clown danced in circles, spinning with the crowbar like he was auditioning for a sadistic version of America's Got Talent.
Okay, my little burger buddies,
he said, bowing.
Time for round one. Who can scream the loudest?
Why are you doing this? Louise asked, voice shaking. The clown paused, tapping the crowbar against his teeth.
Have you ever started a grill so long that the sizzle starts sounding like a lullaby? Ever dream about meat? I do. Every night. You think you're just flipping burgers? You're part of the machine, and I'm here to clean the gears.
He grabbed Louise by the collar and dragged him back into the kitchen. I saw the panic in Louise's eyes, and something else. He wanted me to run. So I did. I slipped behind the freezer door and darted through the dry storage, barely dodging a falling box of peanut oil. My hands found the panic button under the prep counter. I hit it. Silent alarm engaged. I then hid behind the storage boxes, watching out from the gap. The kitchen echoed with screams and laughter, the kind that makes your insides twist. I crouched behind the storage rack, heart slamming against my ribs, listening.
You scream like a pork chop in a pressure cooker, Louise,
the clown shouted, followed by a wet crunch.
You think that's broken? You should see what they did to my dreams.
I heard Louise's scream 2 more times, followed by sounds of bones breaking. After that, all went silent. I could barely stop myself from crying. Then, I heard him calling out to me.
Jamie! Jamie! Where's my little blondie? I promise I'll make it quick. Well, quick-ish, depending on how flexible your kneecaps are.
I bit down on my knuckle to keep from sobbing. I thought he wouldn't be able to find me, but as I looked from the small gap between the boxes, I saw a pair of eyes staring dead at me. He slowly moved the boxes, revealing his entire face, staring up close.
One little hider shaking in a crate. 2 bloody hands, soon to seal your fate. 3 seconds left. Wanna run? Too late.
I closed my eyes, knowing I was going to be dead in seconds.
when I heard cop cars right outside the Five Guys entrance. When I opened them, the clown was gone. The cops pulled me out and took away Louise's dead body in a stretcher. He was beaten to a pulp. I told the cops everything. I told them to check out the security cameras, but it too was out of order. I showed them a picture of Captain Spaulding, but the cops didn't look very hopeful. They said clowns kept changing their attire, so maybe this time he was Spaulding. Next time he might come as Friendo. Who knows? They never found the clown, and I know they won't. Like he said, if they did catch him for what he did, he'd be sitting in a chair, getting electrocuted. I promised Mom and Dad I'd take Patricia trick-or-treating while they handed out candy at home. My little sister was 5 and obsessed with fairies, so she donned this sparkly pink costume with wings that kept getting caught on everything, while I threw on this old pirate outfit from last year. The street was packed with kids and parents. Patricia was having the time of her life, running up to every door and doing this little curtsy before asking for candy. She was being adorable, and I was absolutely enjoying myself for once, instead of feeling too cool for this stuff. Suddenly, my eyes went to a street light about 4 houses down. There was this tall guy, dressed exactly like Michael Myers from those horror movies, standing under it. His costume was perfect, like he'd walked straight out of the set. He stood like a mountain, peering at the rest of us.
Brian, look!
Patricia tugged on my sleeve, holding up a full-size Snickers bar.
The nice lady gave me the big candy.
That's great, Patty, I said, but I kept glancing back at the guy who was still glaring at us. We hit a few more houses. Patricia was getting excited by the hour. But every time I looked over my shoulder, the man was still there, always the same distance behind us, never getting closer, but never falling back either.
Why isn't that man getting candy?
Patricia asked, following my gaze. I don't know, Patty. Maybe he's just watching his kids or something. I said that, but I didn't see any kids with him, and he never moved toward any of the houses. He just followed us from one house to another. By the time we'd gone 6 houses, my stomach was twisting into knots. The man hadn't said a word. He hadn't waved at anyone or done anything normal. He just stood there in that horrible mask, watching us through those empty eye holes. Come on, Patty, I said, taking her hand. Let's head back home.
But we just started. I want to get more candy.
She whined. We can come back out later with Mom and Dad. As we turned around and started walking back toward our house, I heard footsteps behind us, mimicking ours. I glanced back to find the man trailing after us.
Ryan, you're squeezing my hand too tight.
Patricia complained. Sorry. I loosened my grip, but didn't let go. Patty, we need to walk a little faster, okay?
Why?
Just listen to me. I picked up the pace, pulling Patricia along. Behind us, the footsteps got faster, too. My heart started pounding. This wasn't my imagination. This guy was definitely following us. We were 3 blocks from home when I heard the footsteps speed up even more. I turned around and saw the man walking faster, his arms swinging at his sides. Something metallic glinted in his right hand. My eyes widened when I caught the edge. He was holding a huge butcher knife that looked just like the one from the movies. Run, I whispered to Patricia.
What?
Run! I grabbed my sister's hand and we bolted down the sidewalk. Behind us, I could hear the man break into a full sprint. Heavy boots pounded against the pavement, getting closer with each step. Patricia's fairy wings were slowing her down, catching on bushes and mailboxes. She was stumbling and trying to keep up with my longer legs.
Ryan, I can't run this fast.
The footsteps were right behind us now. I could hear his breathing through that horrible mask. We were close, really close. Just then, Patricia tripped and went down hard, scraping her knee on the concrete. She started screaming, not just from pain, but from terror. She had seen the knife too. I didn't blink, just scooped my little sister up in my arms and kept running as her fairy wings crushed against my chest. She couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds, but my legs were on fire. The man was so close I could hear the knife cutting the air as he swung it. Luckily, our house was just a short distance apart. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life. I fumbled with the door handle. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip it. When the door finally opened, I shoved Patricia inside, slamming it behind us and turning every lock. "What happened?" Dad rushed over from the living room where he'd been watching TV. Mom was right behind him. "There was a man," I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. He was following us and he had a knife." Dad's face stilled. He grabbed his baseball bat from the closet and headed for the door. "Call the police," he told Mom. "Dad, don't go out there." But he was already outside, bat in hand, looking up and down the street while Mom dialed 911. He came back in 5 minutes. "You sure you saw him there?" I nodded. The cops showed up 20 minutes later and took our statements. They searched the neighborhood, but didn't find anything. The officer said it was probably just someone's costume that scared us, that we might have overreacted. But the next morning, Dad found deep stabbing marks over his mailbox. Those were fresh cuts that definitely weren't there before Halloween night. The police came back and took photos, but they never found who did it. Patricia had nightmares for weeks after that. She'd wake up screaming and sobbing. Mom had to sleep in her room until she felt safe again. I never told my parents about the part that scared me the most, how perfectly steady he was throughout, like he'd done this before. We moved to a different neighborhood the next year. Dad said it was for a job, but I knew the real reason. Every time we drove past our old house, those knife marks were still there on the mailbox, reminding everyone that monsters sometimes wear masks and walk among us on Halloween night. I've been delivering for Domino's for about 6 months. It was mostly campus dorms and suburban homes. Then came this one order, just past 10 p.m., for Maple Ridge Road. The address was way out, but the customer offered $50 for a large pepperoni, and I was greedy. The GPS kept glitching the whole ride, and the trees grew thicker and thicker until the road ahead was barely visible. Then, out of nowhere, the fog lifted and a small house appeared at the end of the road. But just as I pulled into the driveway, the car jolted. "Ugh, are you kidding me?" I groaned as I got out and crouched next to the front wheel. A long metal screw was buried deep in the rubber, letting the air hiss out. But this wasn't some random hardware store screw. The threading looked like it belonged in a power station. I pocketed it and grabbed the pizza, figuring I'd deal with the tire situation later. The front door opened before I even made it to the porch steps. "Bummer," this old guy greeted, smiling way too wide for someone expecting pizza delivery at 11. From the look of it, he was your grandfather across the street. Gray hair, thick glasses, wearing a cardigan that probably came from Sears 20 years ago. But the vibe around him was nasty. "That's me. $22.50 for the large pepperoni." "Wonderful. Come inside while I find my wallet," he said, stepping back to make room. "Besides, sounds like you'd be here for a while. I heard a tire blow from my kitchen." It was getting chilly and I was stranded, so I followed him inside. Every wall in the living room was covered with missing child posters with those same desperate "missing" or "have you seen me" text across the top. Some looked fresh off the printer, others were sun-faded and curling at the edges like they'd been up there for years. "Whoa, quite a collection you have." "You bet. My uncle knew them all. Very well, in fact." "Your uncle was a cop?" "Oh, no," the old man chuckled. "Way powerful than that." The way he said powerful felt suspicious. I needed to call someone and get away ASAP. I immediately dialed Jake, trying to keep my voice normal while dozens of missing kids stared down at me. "Hey man, can you come pick me up?" "Yeah, the Maple Ridge order. Tire blew out." 20 minutes? Okay, cool. "Hey, you mind if I use your bathroom while I wait?" I asked, desperate for any excuse to get away. "Down the hall, second door on your right." I thanked him and headed down. At the far end, a door stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, I caught glimpses of what looked like a workshop. I knew I shouldn't snoop, but this place was weird enough to seek answers. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Taped to the back wall was a blown-up photo of a man in a security uniform. His name tag read William Afton. Beneath it was a collage of newspaper clippings with headlines about missing children and a security guard who vanished before his trial. But what stopped me cold was what lay on the floor. Bonnie's head. I swear, it wasn't a toy or a replica. It was real or close enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Its purple fur was filthy, clumped with something dark and crusted. One eye dangled from a mess of wires, twitching slightly like it still wanted to see, while the other socket was just empty. Screws were scattered around the floor, like someone had been obsessively tearing Bonnie apart and putting her back together again and again. They were the same kind that blew out my tire. "That's my uncle!" I spun around to find him blocking the only door in the room. Gone was the friendly grandfather smile. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. "I was named after him, you know." Will grinned, inching closer. "Uncle Billy taught me everything before he had to disappear." Taught you what? "Ways to freedom. He understood that kids like you are meant for greater things." Will picked up one of the screws and examined it like it was a precious gem. "I've been following in his footsteps, helped a few find their way, gave them purpose." "You've been killing kids?" I finally realized the dark stains on Bonnie's head weren't rust. "Freeing them," Will corrected, smiling. "The animatronics make it beautiful." I looked at Bonnie's head again and saw scratches inside the jaw, like fingernails had clawed desperately at the metal, and that could have been my final mistake. Suddenly, I felt bony hands grabbing my throat. I couldn't breathe. We crashed into the workbench, making the tools fly everywhere. I ain't petite for a guy my age. 4 years on a farm gives you real muscle. Still, this 60-year-old was impossibly strong. He moved like he'd done this before, maybe for tens of times. "Give it up, kid. You'd love it up there," he grunted, squeezing harder. I drove my elbow into his nose. He gasped but didn't let go. Blood dripped down his broken nose. Still, he smiled bigger. I found a wrench from the scattered tools and swung it blindly at his head. The crack echoed through the room. Will's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. I didn't check if he was breathing. Bolted straight out of the house and threw myself into my car. The engine sputtered twice before catching. I floored it down the gravel driveway as the blown tire shredded to nothing by the time I hit the asphalt. Jake found me in a gas station parking lot 20 minutes later, shaking uncontrollably. I told him an old guy attacked me. We rang the cops. They checked the house for hours, but couldn't find anything. Will had vanished, leaving only those posters and that horrible Bonnie head. That was 8 months ago. They never found Will. I quit the job the next day. Yet, every time I see Five Nights at Freddy merchandise, I think about those scratches in Bonnie's jaw and wonder if Will's still out there, carrying on Uncle Billy's work.
I just moved into the studio apartment near campus 3 weeks ago. The rent was suspiciously cheap for the area, but as a psychology major, I knew exactly why. The previous tenant, another psych student named David, had supposedly lost his mind studying child psychology there. He used to talk to himself, blaring Cocomelon videos all night, and claimed in his journals that he felt he was getting addicted to the stuff. David dropped out mid-semester and wasn't ever seen again. I ignored these rumors, and the first 3 nights went absolutely normal, until on the 4th, my life turned to hell. I was deep into studying developmental psychology when I heard the faint Cocomelon intro jingle playing outside my window. Some neighbor with a kid, maybe, I figured. So I plugged in earbuds and went back to my textbook. An hour passed without a pin out of place, but then I removed the earbuds. I could still hear the jingle boom. This time, I couldn't help myself. I lived on the 3rd floor, facing the quietest street in the city, usually hush at day and night alike. The jingle felt enchanting the longer it echoed, as if it were pulling me towards itself. My feet mechanically inched toward the window, and my hands flung open the curtains to find a man standing directly under my building. holding a tablet above his head. He wore a cracked plastic cocoa melon mask with half of the face missing, showing real skin underneath. It was the tablet blasting the jingle at full volume, but what made my stomach drop was the way his shining eyes were staring directly into mine. When he saw me looking down, he tilted his head too far, like his neck wasn't attached to his body. Then, he pointed right at me and smirked. I stumbled back, heart racing. It's just my imagination, I told myself, waited, then looked again. He was still there, blaring the same addictive jingle, only it was getting louder and louder. Additionally, the tablet glitched and changed clips, until the man raised it higher, angling it toward my window. I grabbed my phone and zoomed in on the screen. What I saw made my blood run cold. The video showed me studying minutes before in the studio. The angle was from above, like whoever recorded it was floating inches away while filming. I could see my textbooks, my coffee mug, and everything exactly as it is right now. I slammed the curtain shut and called 911. "There's a man outside my apartment," I told the dispatcher. When Officer Martinez arrived 20 minutes later, we went to the window together. The street was empty. "You said he was right there?" he asked, scanning the now empty sidewalk. The officer checked around the building, but as facts had it, there wasn't any trace of a human presence. "The previous tenant reported similar hallucinations, Jake, until he vanished," he said. "Be careful and ring me if you ever feel like you don't want to." That night, sleep was the farthest thing from my mind. I kept checking the locks and windows. The clock had struck 4 a.m. when exhaustion finally took over, and I dozed off, only to be awakened minutes later to the same Cocoa Melon intro jingle, and it was coming from my laptop. This time, it wasn't only louder, it felt closer. I spun around, peering at every inch of the space. The apartment was empty, but my door was unlocked. The glow of the laptop screen flickered across the walls, but it wasn't the light that froze my blood. It was the man whom I saw outside moments back. In the far corner, crouched low like an animal, a man stared at me with wide, glowing eyes. His lips twisted into an unnatural grin. His skin looked pale, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, and the sound of a faint giggle escaped his throat. When my eyes locked with him, he rose slowly, bones cracking as he straightened, still smiling. "I can't stop hearing it," he whispered, his voice shaking, with a mix of madness and a cry for help. He pulled something from his pocket, an old rusted stapler. "The jingle never ends, but I've got an idea now. I'm gonna make him stop." Before I could move, he lifted the stapler to his ear and clack, drove the first staple through flesh. Blood trickled down his cheek as he laughed louder, his eyes never leaving mine. Clack, clack. Each squeeze tore his ear further, the metallic snap echoing in the room. Blood dripped on the floor, staining the carpet. His laughter turned guttural, unhinged. I screamed, calling out, "Marcus! Marcus!" My voice cracked with terror. At once, the man's grin faltered. Without another word, he bolted, sprinting out the door and down the hall, leaving a trail of blood behind. I called the police again. This time, they found evidence of forced entry, scratches around the window lock, and footprints on the fire escape. The man had been coming and going for weeks. As the cops took a good look at the apartment, they found a hidden space inside the walls. There was a dirty mattress with empty cans of beer and plastic wrappers of protein bars piled around. And under the mattress, there was an almost faded-out student ID that read the name David Bowles. David was found in the basement, hiding behind sewage pipes. When the cops escorted him out, he was shaking his head and laughing like a maniac. As he walked down the hallway to the cop car parked outside, he kept singing, "Wash, wash, wash your hands, wash them nice and clean. Brush, brush, brush your teeth, brush them every day.
Peekaboo, I see you! Peekaboo, I see you!
It was later confirmed that David descended into madness from watching too much Cocomelon. I also did my own research and came to this conclusion. Cocomelon is designed to hijack a toddler's natural attraction to sound, color, and repetition. Basically, it's baby crack, and it can turn you insane too, if you succumb to it.
I bought a Labubu doll for my niece's birthday. She's got this obsession with weird toys, the kind that makes most kids scream and cry. Creepy stuffed animals, pop-eyed figurines, skeleton-shaped plushies. If it's bizarre, she wants it. When I found a limited edition Labubu online, I thought it was perfect. Still, when the package arrived, I felt a chill just looking at it. The doll was small, covered in blue fur that felt greasy when my fingers brushed against it. Its black button eyes were too wide, too shiny, like they were always wet. But the grin was the worst part, stitched from corner to corner, jagged and crooked, like it had been torn across its face. I remember whispering, "Man, this thing is more nightmare fuel than a birthday gift." I wrapped it anyway, set it on the shelf in my living room and tried not to think about it. But later that night, I couldn't stop. I was scrolling on my phone when I stumbled onto a horror forum. One post jumped out at me. The Labubu Whisper Game. Don't stare at its grin in the dark. If you do, it'll call your name at 3 a.m. Ridiculous internet garbage. But still, I had the doll, right there, wrapped, sitting on the shelf. By 2:50 a.m., I decided to test it. I turned off the lights, sat on the couch, and unwrapped the gift just enough to reveal its face. The grin stared back at me, glowing faintly in the moonlight leaking through the blinds. The house was dead quiet except for the clock ticking on the wall. I stared. Minute after minute passed. My eyelids grew heavy. I was just about to laugh it off when... My breath caught. Someone did whisper in a child's voice. I jumped in fear. I live alone. No way it could be a prank. My pulse blasted in my ears. No way. I'm just imagining it. But then I heard it again. Ethan. Wanna play hide and clap? This time, right by my ear. I shot off the couch, spinning in circles, hands raised like I could fight whatever it was. I even saw a shadow that looked like a bunny running into the living room. I followed it with caution, but there was no one. All I could hear was eerie silence, and the creepy Labubu was staring into my soul. I was wondering whether my mind was playing tricks on me when my phone buzzed. The vibration nearly made me scream. I grabbed it with shaking hands. It was a text from my niece. How weird, I thought before reading it. But once I opened it, I was 10 times more scared.
Uncle, I can hear you calling my name. Why are you outside my window?
I looked at the time. It was 3:07 a.m. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't left my living room. My hands began trembling. Without wasting a second more, I called my sister. After a few seconds of ringing, she answered the phone in a groggy and annoyed voice.
What, Ethan?
Listen to me. Do not open the door. Do not open the windows. Go to Trish's room. Now, please.
What are you...
Damn it, just do it. Please. I held on to the call until my sister reached my niece's room. I heard her opening a door. A few seconds of pause were retained. Then she uttered, confused.
She's asleep. Fine. What the hell is this about?
I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just hung up, grabbed the Labubu, and ran out of the door. The streets were empty as I sped across town, every shadow looking like it was moving. I got to their house in record time and rushed inside. My niece was curled under her blanket, peaceful, like nothing had happened. My sister demanded an explanation, but I couldn't give her one. I just stood there, staring at my niece's tiny chest, rising and falling, before glancing down at the doll in my arms. Its grin seemed wider now, its glass eyes catching the dim light like they were alive. I knew then I couldn't give it to her. Back home, I carried it straight down to the basement. My hands were shaking as I dragged out an old iron trunk. I dropped the doll inside, the sound of it hitting the bottom echoing in the concrete room. I slammed the lid shut, locked it with the thickest padlock I owned, and then I whispered, "You're not getting out. Ever." For a moment, silence. The basement felt colder and heavier, like the air had stopped moving. Then I heard a cry. The cry sounded like a child who had endured harsh treatment from its parents. The cry grew louder and louder, but I wasn't falling for the trap anymore. The Labubu tried various ways to mold you to its will. Maybe that's why people can't help but submerge themselves in the madness of these toys. I bolted upstairs, slammed the basement door shut, and locked it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, sitting on my couch with every light blazing, waiting for the sun to come up. By morning, the world looked normal again. The doll was locked away, the whispers were gone, and my niece was safe. But one thing stuck with me. The text is from my niece. It's still on my phone. Thought later, she said she didn't text me anything like that. The whole event from that night is so mysterious. I have a dozen questions, but not a single answer. Is it possible that the doll somehow bewitched me and my niece at the same time? Maybe she did hear my voice, but drifted quickly back to sleep, not knowing some evil spirit controlled her for some time. I'll keep it locked in the trunk in my basement, forever, because I know if it ever gets out, I might not get the chance to walk out of my house alive.
The day it happened started like any other. I'd driven my van 5 hours deep into the mountains, chasing a spot I'd scouted online. It was a quiet clearing wrapped in tall pine trees. The air was crisp, with cozy monsoon vibes and the soft crackle of campfires nearby. It felt like a hidden gem, perfect for my ASMR channel, which had finally started gaining traction. I pitched my tent and set up fast. I locked the camera in for golden hour as the camp stove crackled to life, exactly what my subscribers eat up. For a while, everything went as planned. The chopping footage was crisp, and the sizzling meat created satisfying crackles. I was already imagining the comments. Then the sun sank, and the coyotes began. The first howl came from maybe half a mile west, followed by an answering one from the north. 10 minutes later, they were howling from every direction, drawing a full circle. I kept filming, trying to play it off as authentic wilderness ambiance, but my instincts screamed danger. Coyotes don't box you in unless they're hunting, or unless something bigger is hunting them. I ducked into my tent to eat and film the final segment, almost desperate to get it over with. The mesh windows gave me a clear view of the darkening forest, while the camera captured every bite. I lifted the first piece of steak, eyes on the lens, when a sudden movement at the window knocked the air out of my lungs. I turned to look at the window and saw a pair of wide blue eyes staring back at me. Someone was standing in the dark and observing for God knows how long. I only saw the eyes and a patch of forehead, yet I could tell the unknown intruder was smiling at me. I screamed and scrambled back to find something to defend myself, but as I looked again, the man was gone. It was just empty darkness outside my window. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unzip the tent. Somehow I made it into the van and slammed the car door shut. For a while, nothing happened. Everything was so still. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. It could be fatigue, or maybe just the mountain and forest playing tricks on my mind. 5 to 7 minutes passed. No suspicious event occurred. But suddenly, the passenger side door handle rattled. "Evening, beautiful." Someone spoke in a masculine voice from outside, with this weird cheerful tone that made my skin crawl. I loved your ASMRs and the aesthetics. The handle rattled more aggressively. "I've been watching you for months," he said, circling the van. "Those location tags are literally lifesavers."
Who are you?
I stuttered. "A loyal follower," he murmured, his voice shifting closer. "I drove 6 hours for you. The least you can do is come out and say hi. Maybe give a little autograph?" I tried to start the engine, but it rumbled twice and then died.
He tapped on the window. "Oh, sorry, but I kinda messed up your car. Hope you don't mind."
Are you nuts?
He planted his face on the glass window and murmured, "You know, you're even prettier up close. I couldn't waste a chance like this. I even brought my own camera. How about we film a video together?" I was terrified, but managed to stay calm. He wants me to be scared, but I won't let him take the upper hand. I screamed back,
You think I haven't dealt with worse than you? Stick around, I'll let the cops handle what's left.
He paused for a second, then climbed onto the roof. The van rocked under his weight. I tried the engine again. It just won't work. He started jumping on the van, yelling like a mad hound. To make it worse, the weather got rough. It started drizzling before a total downpour took over. Through the streaming windows, I caught glimpses of him jumping down, circling the van like a vulture. I dialed 911 and told the operator about my whereabouts, secretly hoping they'll reach me before this crazy psycho does. Rain makes everything more dramatic. He laughed, pressing his face against my window. His shirt was gone. His pale skin was gleaming wet. He started licking the window, and trust me, I've never seen such a big tongue. I tried the ignition again, but the engine was completely dead. Through the rain, I saw him hefting a rock the size of a bowling ball. He moved toward the back of the van, toward the rear window. Panic flooded my system. I must get away now. I raked my eyes all over the place. The heavy rain had stolen nearly all visibility, but it had made the ground slippery, and my van was parked on a slope. My hand shot to the parking brake. If I could just... The rock smashed through the rear window. Glass exploded everywhere as his arm reached through the jagged opening, reaching for me. I yanked the parking brake. The van lurched forward, rolling down the incline. He screamed as the momentum ripped his arm back through the broken glass. "Ah, my arm! You witch!" I needed to go faster. I pumped the brake pedal to steer around the trees, the van sliding wildly down the slope. Through the mirrors, I saw him chasing after me, blood streaming down my arm. The van hit level ground, and I slammed the ignition again. This time, the engine caught. I floored it without looking back and didn't stop until I reached the nearby town. The man's name was Daryl Rothborn, and he was caught 3 days later at another campground 50 miles south. Turns out he's been running this stuff for over a year now, targeting young women who posted their locations online. He got life without parole. I quit YouTube, deleted everything, but I still wake up sweat-soaked, knowing that somewhere out there, more psychos like him exist.
I needed the money. That's the only reason I took the night cleaning job at the old Freddy Fazbear's location on Elm Street. The place has been shut down since the mid-90s after some tragedy nobody in town wants to discuss. Kids went missing, or so the rumors went. The owner, a property management company, just wanted someone to keep it from falling apart completely while they figured out what to do with it. $12 an hour to mop floors and dust off 20-year-old pizza grease seemed easy money for a guy between jobs. It was my first night and I was somewhat cynical. The place was huge and smelled like mold and rancid cooking oil, but I'd worked worse gigs. So those faded murals of cartoon animals that still covered the walls, their paint peeling away in long strips, didn't creep me out much. Neither did the old arcade machines that sat dark and silent, with screens cracked or entirely missing. What got to me was the stage. 3 animatronics stood there like broken mannequins, a bear, a rabbit, and a chicken. Some had stripped most of their fur years ago, leaving exposed metal endoskeletons with wires spilling out like guts. Their glass eyes reflected my flashlight beam whenever I walked past, and each time it was an effort not to stop and stare. The clock had struck 12 p.m. I was mopping near the stage when I heard the faint, mechanical clapping echoing from somewhere in the building. I instantly stopped and listened, but the sound had already faded. The building hadn't had power in years. The electrical company had disconnected everything after the place closed. But as I stood there in the dark, the stage lights suddenly flickered on for maybe 2 seconds before dying again. In that brief moment of light, I saw the bear's jaw twitch open. Welcome back, kids, came a voice from the speakers, thick with static and barely audible before it went silent. My mop hit the floor with a wet slap. Every muscle in my body was telling me to run, but I forced myself to think rationally. It's an old building, dude, I reassured myself. Maybe it was some residual power in a backup battery somewhere. The animatronics were probably motion activated, responding to my movements. I nodded to myself. It made sense, but as I bent to pick up the mop, those faint giggles made my skin crawl. It started soft, like an echo from another room, but grew louder until it filled the entire building. It felt like I was standing at a kid's birthday party, but there were no kids. The building was empty, except for me. I ran for the front entrance, fumbling with my keys as the laughter continued behind me. But when I reached the doors, I found heavy chains wrapped around the handles. I hadn't noticed them when I came in. Maybe someone locked them after I started. Hey! I called out, pounding on the door. Behind me, the stage light surged brighter, and this time it stayed on. I watched in horror at those deflated balloons hanging from the ceiling. The tables in the dining area had paper plates and cups scattered across them, as if kids had just finished eating. The dining room had been empty minutes ago. Now every table was full. Pale children sat at every table, maybe a dozen of them, all staring directly at me. Their faces were too white and still. Their clothes looked like they came from decades ago. All of them had this wide grin on their faces, screaming, "Run!" "Get him! Get him! Get him!" they cheered. Suddenly, grinding metal filled the air as the three animatronics stepped down from the stage. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, servos winding with each step, wires dragged behind them like intestines. The bear spoke first. "It's time for the show!" I backed toward the kitchen, looking for another exit, but found myself trapped between the dining room and a wall of stainless steel equipment. The animatronics advanced slowly. Their glass eyes never left my face. "Don't you want to stay for the fun?" the rabbit asked, its head tilted at an impossible angle. The children at the table began to giggle again. They even clapped in joy like my fear amused them. I grabbed a heavy meat cleaver from the prep station and held it out in front of me. "Stay back!" The chicken animatronic lunged first, moving faster than anything that Broken should have been able to. Its metal claws raked against my forearm, tearing through my jacket into my skin. I swung the cleaver and connected with its neck joint, sending sparks flying as wires severed. It kept coming. The bear grabbed my shoulders with hands that felt like steel vices. I could smell motor oil and decay as it pulled me close to its ruined face. "You can't leave," it whispered. "No one ever leaves." I drove the cleaver into its chest, hitting something vital. The animatronic convulsed and released me as black fluid sprayed from its damaged components. I ran through the kitchen toward what I hoped was a back exit. The rabbit's footsteps pounded behind me. I found a door marked emergency exit and threw my full weight against it. It opened into an alley behind the building. I didn't stop running until I reached my car 3 blocks away. I tried explaining everything to the company once. They said I was hallucinating from stress. The building burned down 2 months later. They blamed faulty wiring, but the place hadn't had power in years. Sometimes I drive past the empty lot where Freddy Fazbear's used to stand. There's nothing there now except charred concrete and weeds. But on quiet nights, if I roll down my windows, I swear I can still hear children laughing in the distance. Some jobs aren't worth the money, and some places should stay closed forever. I was grounded on Halloween night because I had, forgotten to take out the trash for 3 weeks straight, which felt like the worst punishment in the world when you're 10 years old.
No costume, no candy, or leaving this house, Tristan. Maybe next year you'll be more responsible.
Mom warned. So, I sat by my window, listening to groups of kids laughing and running down our street. By 10, the house was quiet. Mom and Dad had gone to bed early, probably exhausted. That's when I made the stupidest decision of my life.
I grabbed my vampire costume from the closet, found an old pillowcase, and snuck out through the back door. The street was mostly empty now, except for a few teenagers heading home, but some neighbors were still answering their doors. I actually managed to collect a decent amount of candy, feeling pretty proud of myself for pulling off the great escape. I was heading back home when I decided to take a shortcut through Willow Park. It was this old playground that the city kept meaning to update but never did. During the day, it was fine, but at night, it felt like a graveyard with rusted swings creaking in the wind and broken streetlights casting weird shadows. That's where I saw her. She was sitting on one of the swings, rocking slowly back and forth, donning an old wedding dress, but it was torn and dirty, like she'd been dragging it through mud. Her long black hair hung down over her face, and she was humming under her breath. I stopped walking, trying to make out the words. It sounded like a nursery rhyme intentionally sung off key.
Ring around a rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Something about the way she sang it made my skin crawl. It wasn't playful like when kids sing it. It sounded sad and angry at the same time. I should have turned around and found another way home. Every instinct I had was telling me to get out of there. But I was 10, stupid, and curious. I dragged my feet closer. Just then, the swing stopped moving. It halted like someone had grabbed the chains, defying every law of physics I'd later know. Slowly, the woman lifted her head and looked right at me. I'll never forget her face until my last breath. Her skin was pale and mottled, like meat that had been left out too long, but it was her eyes that made me want to scream. She smiled really big.
Come here, little boy. Come play with Sarah. Sarah's been so lonely.
I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of concrete. She started to stand up from the swing, and that's when I saw the rest of her. The wedding dress was stained crimson, and there was a rope burn around her neck like someone had tried to hang her.
I said, come here.
She hissed, agitated. The evident fury bounced across the playground and smacked right through my bones. That broke whatever spell had frozen me in place. I sprinted faster than I'd ever run in my entire life, hearing her giggles right by my ears. The pillowcase was long forgotten. I made it home in record time, slipping back through the rear door and up to my room without waking my parents. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I changed out of my costume and got into bed, pulling the covers over my head. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was just some hobo who'd wandered into the park and my 10-year-old brain had turned her into a monster. But the singing, I heard the singing crystal clear, and I was hearing it again.
Ring around a rosy, pocket full of posies.
I peeked over my blanket and nearly wet myself. She was there, pressed against the window, staring at me with those horrible eyes. Her face was squished against the glass. Her black hair was spread out like spider legs.
Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
She sang, grinning, looking me straight in the eye. I tried to scream for my parents, but no sound would come out. I could only lie there, trembling like a leaf, while she hummed that rhyme over and over again. Each time her fingernails scraped against the glass, I'd flinch, whimper, and sob. This went on for hours. Every time I thought she left, I'd hear that scratchy voice again.
Ring around the rosy.
The worst part was that my bedroom was on the second floor. There was no tree outside my window or anything else that could remotely explain a climb, but she was right there, lurking and giggling. Exhaustion might have taken over somewhere, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through my window, and my alarm was going off. For a few seconds, I thought it had all been a nightmare, the worst nightmare of my life, but still a dream. Then I saw it. Stuck in the corner of my window frame was a piece of dirty white fabric. When I opened the window to get a better look, I realized it was a piece of wedding veil, old and yellowed, with dark stains that looked suspiciously like dried blood. I never told my parents about that night. I was too terrified and confused. They would have thought I was making up stories to get out of being grounded anyway. I found out later from my friend's older brother that a woman had killed herself in Willow Park about 10 years ago. She'd been left at the altar by her fiancé and couldn't handle the humiliation. They found her hanging from the swing set, still wearing her wedding dress. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and according to the newspaper articles, she'd been dead for days before anyone found her. I never took that shortcut through the park again. Even now, I drive the long way rather than pass by those swings.
Kyle dragged me to this Halloween party against my will, even when he knew how much I hated parties, crowds, and all that pretending. "Julia's gonna be there," he said with this wink as he walked over. My stomach dropped. "Why the hell would you tell me that now? Come on, man, she's cute and obviously into you." Into me was putting it lightly. Julia had been stalking me for months. It started when I made the mistake of being polite to her at a Starbucks. Next thing I know, she's showing up everywhere I go and leave this creepy stuff behind. Dead birds wrapped in black cloth, jars filled with dirt and hair. When I told her to back off, she just smiled and said she'd come around once the moon was right. The girl was totally unhinged, but I couldn't let her dictate my life. I told myself I'd enjoy the party, and I did, until I saw her again. She was across the room, dressed like Aunt Gladys from the movie Weapons. She had makeup that looked like skin rotten in place. It was gray, cracked, and clung to bone. Her eyes were sunken deep, and she had put red contacts on that glowed like coals under the dim light. Stringy hair hung down her shoulders, and I wasn't sure if it was a wig, and her red lipstick was smudged on the corners of her lips. I tried to ignore her, engaging in conversations with other people, but I still could feel her eyes on me wherever I went. At around midnight, she cornered me by the kitchen.
Dance with me, Eric.
She purred in this raspy voice. "Just stay away."
You can't fight what's meant to be.
"You're crazy. Get help." She scrunched her nose, but backed away. I could see her lips moving like she was muttering to herself. I didn't stick around. Kyle was too drunk to notice, so I slipped out quietly and headed home alone. 3 blocks from my apartment, the street light ahead started flickering. I brushed it off and kept walking, but just as I turned the corner, there she was. Still in that Aunt Gladys costume with same rotting makeup and stringy hair. But instead of the red contacts, now her eyes were pitch black. Not just the pupils, the whole thing. Like someone had poured ink into them.
We need to finish this.
She said, "There's nothing to finish. Leave me alone." I tried to walk past her, but she grabbed my wrist. Her skin was ice cold, and her grip was strong enough to bruise.
You don't get to choose.
She hissed. Before I could react, she lunged forward and grabbed a fistful of my hair. Pain shot through my scalp as she yanked hard enough to rip strands out by the roots. "Hey, what the heck are you doing?" She pulled out this twisted piece of wood covered in thorns and started wrapping my hair around it, chanting in some language I didn't recognize. Her voice got deeper with each word, like something else was speaking through her.
You're mine, Eric.
She whispered, her breath hot against my ear.
Body and soul.
The twigs started getting warm near my chin before it burned hot. She snapped it in half while still chanting, and I swear the air around us got thick. "You're insane!" I screamed, finally managing to shove her away. She stumbled but didn't fall. "I would rather die than be with you," I yelled.
That can be arranged.
She giggled as she came at me with the broken twig, thorns aimed at my eyes. I immediately bolted down the street, my sneakers pounding against the concrete.
Behind me, I could hear her feet hitting the pavement, but she wasn't running footsteps. Instead, I could hear this weird skipping rhythm, like she was dancing. I glanced back and immediately wish I hadn't. She was moving wrong. Her arms were swinging too loose, and her head had tilted at an angle that should have hurt her neck, but she was gaining on me. I cut through an alley, jumping over trash bags and dodging dumpsters. My lungs were burning, but I could still hear that sick skipping and giggling getting closer. When I looked back, she was maybe 10 feet behind me, grinning that horrible stretched smile.
Eric! You can't run forever!
She squealed. I burst out of the alley and onto the main street. My building was still 2 blocks away. My legs were cramping up, but every time I slowed down even slightly, I'd hear that skipping and chanting getting closer. At the corner, I glanced back. Julia was just a few feet away. Her palms were reaching out to me, and I could feel the heat of her body mingling with mine. Before she could grab me, I shoved an elbow into her ribs, hard. I felt her stumble back, heard a crack, but didn't look twice. I bolted, sprinting down the block like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. I made it to my building and slammed the door behind me, throwing every lock we had. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Aunt Gladys smiling at me. The next morning, Kyle gave me the news. They'd found Julia unconscious on the sidewalk around 3 a.m. with a severe head injury. She was in the hospital, but couldn't remember anything, not even her name or where she lived.
Weird thing is, Kyle said, there was all this hair scattered around where they found her, human hair, and some kind of burned wood.
I touched the sore spot on my scalp where she'd ripped out my hair. The doctors said Julia's memory loss might be permanent. Part of me feels bad about pushing her, but mostly I was relieved. If she couldn't remember me, maybe the nightmare's over. I should have noticed the red flags when she refused to let me sign that roommate agreement in anything but green ink. Even so, I was desperate for a place near campus, and Vera seemed normal enough during our brief coffee shop meeting. The apartment was exactly what I was looking for. In a week, I moved in. The first morning, I woke up to this weird, rhythmic sound coming from the kitchen. Whisk, whisk, whisk. I stumbled out in my pajamas, expecting to find her making pancakes or something. Instead, Vera stood at the counter in complete silence, whisking green powder in a ceramic bowl with surgical precision. I watched her count under her breath.
78, 79, 80.
Before she lifted the bowl with both hands, bowed her head like she was praying, and took one tiny sip.
Morning ritual.
She giggled when she noticed me staring.
Matcha helps me wake up.
I laughed it off and went back to my room to continue my revisions. By 9, things got stranger. I stepped out of my room to find my coffee maker unplugged and shoved into the back of a cabinet.
Oh, that thing?
Vera said when I asked.
I moved it. The smell was interfering with my matcha practice. Interfering? How?
She paused, holding her matcha whisk like it was sacred.
Coffee creates chaos in the mind. Matcha brings clarity.
I plugged the machine back in and made my usual mid-morning cup. Vera watched me from across the kitchen, her eyes tracking every movement. When I took a sip, she visibly flinched. The next time I took a break and stepped out, she had 2 bowls out.
I made extra this time,
she said, extending one toward me. The liquid was this unnatural bright green, almost glowing under the kitchen lights.
You should try it, Danny. Really, try it.
I took a polite sip. It tasted like grass clippings mixed with chalk.
Thanks, but I'd stick to coffee.
Her smile flickered.
Coffee is poison. It makes you jittery. Matcha would heal you. I like being jittery,
I replied, trying to keep it light. By the time afternoon fell, all my coffee and coffee maker had disappeared. When I confronted her, Vera had the audacity to claim she'd never seen it.
Maybe you put it with those trash boxes?
She suggested, with that same sweet smile.
Memory can be unreliable when you're slowly poisoning yourself with caffeine.
I didn't want to go looking for rentals all over again. I figured I'd just avoid her and ordered a new machine instead. It arrived a couple of hours later, only to be smashed to pieces before I could even get my hands on it. I was in my room when I'd heard the crash. When I stepped out, Vera was neatly arranging the pieces in a circle on the kitchen table.
Vera!
I hissed, somewhat pissed.
Sit.
She said, patting the chair across from her.
We need to talk.
I spared one annoying glance at the broken coffee maker and settled in.
Your obsession with coffee is unhealthy, Danny. You've no idea what you're missing on.
She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were ice cold.
I'm trying to help you see clearly. To see the world through green.
I yanked my hand away.
You're insane. I'm moving out and I'll sue you.
That's when her mask totally slipped. Vera was furious and looked like a child whose favorite toy had been taken away.
You can't leave.
She whispered.
Not when my matcha fairy has accepted you.
I stood to go to my room, but she was faster. She grabbed my dangly earring and yanked hard. The metal tore through my earlobe and I felt warm blood trickling down my neck.
Vera, what the?
She slammed me against the wall so hard my vision blurred.
You will drink the matcha.
You will see what I see. You will understand what I understand.
She hissed, her face inches from mine.
Leave me! Help! Somebody help me!
She dragged me toward the stove, where a pot of green tea was simmering. The liquid was thicker than before, with an oily film on the surface.
This is a special batch.
She said, ladling it into a bowl.
It'll help you transition.
The tea was scalding hot. I could see steam rising from it as she carried it toward me, but I ducked away at the last second, and the entire bowl of liquid splashed across my left arm. The pain was immediate and excruciating, like someone had pressed a hot iron against my skin. I screamed, clutching my burned arm, and that seemed to snap something else inside her. She walked calmly to the knife block and pulled out the butcher blade. It was a 10-inch chef's knife with a wicked curved edge.
If you won't drink it willingly,
She said, testing the knife's sharpness against her thumb.
maybe I need to help you understand differently.
No, please, Vera, please!
She couldn't hear me. She raised the blade above her head and lunged forward, but in her rage, she'd forgotten about the puddle of spilled matcha beneath her feet. Her sneakers hit the slick tile and went out from under her. She fell backward, and her head struck the kitchen floor with enough force to crack the tile. The knife skittered across the floor and came to rest under the refrigerator. Vera didn't move. For maybe 30 seconds, I just stood there, bleeding and burned, staring at her motionless body. A thin line of blood was pooling beneath her head, mixing with the spilled green tea to create this sick brownish color. I remember calling 911 with shaking hands. The paramedics arrived first, then the cops. They loaded Vera onto a stretcher. She was breathing but unconscious, with a massive lump on the back of her skull. One of the EMTs said something about a possible brain bleed. The police charged her with assault when she woke up in the hospital, but I moved out that same day and haven't followed the case except where needed. I don't consume tea or coffee anymore. I just can't without an urge to throw up.
I moved to Milan 3 months ago for a job at this tech company. Life felt good. Better than good, actually. I was addicted to those Italian memes and weird internet stuff, so living here was the exact dopamine hit that promised the high. But being 23 and alone in a foreign country gets lonely real fast. I didn't have many friends yet, and weekends were usually spent curled up in a blanket at home, scrolling the gram for hours. That's when Lucy from accounting came up to me with a pet carrier during lunch. She had this wide smile that seemed a bit too excited.
You said you wanted a companion so badly. I found the perfect one for you!
She squealed. When she opened it, I saw a cat with a name tag, David, hanging on its collar. David was not like any cat I'd ever seen. No hair at all, with skin that looked see-through under the light. His eyes bulged out of his head like they were about to pop. His arms and legs were way too long for his body. He was bigger than most cats. He's, different, I said, intently eyeing the weird creature.
Oh, isn't he special?
Lucy giggled. The moment she left, the cat looked right at me and made this rough whisper that sounded like, yeah. And I burst out laughing. This was it. It was peak brain rot come to life. I whipped out my phone and started recording, dubbing him the Gato Gyat. Within hours, the video had blown up. 500K views, thousands of comments. People were losing their minds over this bizarre Italian meme cat. I felt like I'd struck internet gold. But as I returned home, I noticed the cat's behavior getting weirder. I found him trying to crawl at my bedroom door with these unnaturally long claws, repeating gyat in different tones. Sometimes it sounded high-pitched. At others, it was so deep, it sounded like it came from somewhere else entirely. When I yelled at him to stop, he stilled completely. Then he stood up on his hind legs and stared at me with his bulging eyes. He wasn't even blinking. He just stared and stared and stared. Ignoring all this, I fed David and ate dinner. Around 12, I was lying down in my bed, scrolling through comments on my recent video, when I heard someone calling from the living room. Hey, come here for a sec. My mouth went dry, and my heart hammered. I live alone in a 2-story house. As I stepped into the living room, I found David in the center of the room. He was again standing in his tubes. And not just that, he was smiling. Like a solid, scary, psycho grin. When he spoke again, my soul left my body. Contemplating life choices, aren't we, Marco? The creature crept closer, baring its teeth at me. You shouldn't have let me in. I bolted into my room screaming. I slammed the door shut, just in time before the cat, or whatever it was, lunged at me. In the chaos, my phone flew out the open window, tumbling into the alley below. For 8 hellish hours, I begged whatever God was listening to keep me alive. David didn't stop. He hurled furniture at the walls and pounded on my door with fists. But the worst part wasn't the noise. It was the voices, mocking and bleeding through the wood like poison. Come out and play, Marco, he'd whisper in my tone. Don't you want to make another video? Around 3 a.m., the banging got so violent, I was certain he'd break through. I crawled into my closet, pulled my knees to my chest, and tried to convince myself this wasn't happening. Fever set in somewhere around dawn. My body was shaking uncontrollably as the sounds of shrill meowing and demonic growls numbed my ears. This continued for God knows how long. But suddenly, it all stopped. I couldn't hear anything more. I finally found the courage to open the door. Outside my bedroom, the apartment looked like a crime scene. Furniture was overturned. Dishes were smashed. Deep claw marks were gouged into every surface. In the living room lay a crumpled pile of what looked like empty skin, mixed with blood and foul-smelling translucent liquid. There were tracks of bloody stains all over the floor, like someone dragged a dead body in my house. And David? Well, he was gone. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, somehow unbroken despite the chaos. There was one new video in my camera roll, recorded at 4:17 a.m. The footage showed my living room. David stood in the middle of the frame, but he wasn't David anymore. His skin hung loose like an oversized coat. And underneath? God, I couldn't name what was underneath. Something with too many joints, fingers that bent in directions that shouldn't exist, and a face that kept shifting between human features I couldn't recognize. As the thing shed David's skin completely, It turned to look directly into the camera. When it spoke, it used my voice again. Yeah, damn, this body's getting old. Time to find a new one. Thanks for the followers, though. They're going to love what comes next. The video ended with the sound of my apartment door opening and closing. I haven't posted anything since. Every time I see a viral video now, every time something becomes an instant meme, I wonder if it's really organic or if something else is using our obsessions against us. Skinwalkers are adapting, evolving, and learning our language through our screens. David is still out there somewhere in Milan, probably wearing someone else's face and speaking in someone else's voice. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm scrolling through my feed, I see comments on random videos that make my stomach drop. Comments that just say, yeah, and get thousands of likes.
Everyone at the office knew Brian as the matcha guy. In the 3 months since he joined our marketing team, I hadn't seen him eat a single real meal or even glance at a cup of coffee. Just endless mugs of that green powder whisked right at his desk. We thought it was just another wellness kick, until Brian went full cult mode. He'd called people out mid-meeting like it was his personal mission. "Matcha drinkers don't make dumb mistakes," he scoffed after I flubbed a slide in the client deck. "Maybe if you detoxed once in a while, your brain start actually functioning, Daniel." Sarah rolled her eyes from across the room. We'd both hit our limit with Brian's non-stop judgment of everyone's choices. I complained to HR and they said he was just passionate about wellness and that they'd talk to him, and that was that. The breaking point came during a late-night shift. It was just the three of us, scrambling to finish an urgent project. Brian was shooting down every idea Sarah and I pitched. "Your thinking is clouded," he kept saying. "Green tea opens the mind. Coffee shuts it down. No wonder yours is so backed up." When he finally disappeared to the bathroom around 10 p.m., Sarah looked at me, exasperated.
Oh, I can't do another 4 hours of this, Dan.
She groaned. That's when my eyes fell on the sacred stash of matcha tins, all lined up like smug little soldiers on his desk, and an idea popped up. "You thinking what I'm thinking, Sarah?" With a wicked grin, she replied,
Let's teach the matcha prophet a lesson.
We gathered every tin of his precious powder and carried them to the office bathroom. Sarah giggled excitingly as I opened the first container and dumped the bright green dust into the toilet.
So satisfying.
Sarah tittered as we flushed away months of his expensive collection, watching the toilet water turn an unnatural shade of green. By the time we finished, we'd destroyed at least $300 worth of his supply. There, maybe now he'll shut up about the matcha god's superiority, I said as we settled into our desks. 20 minutes later, Brian returned from his break and went straight to his matcha station. I watched from my computer as he reached for his first tin and frowned. He went on to open the second, the third, and the fourth. For a couple of seconds, he just stared at those empty tins like they were proof the universe had turned on him. "Where is it?" he hissed through clenched teeth. Sarah and I kept working, ignoring him entirely. "Where is my matcha?" Brian repeated, gritting his teeth so hard I really thought he'd break a molar or two.
Maybe you ran out?
Sarah stuttered. "When I just received 8 imported ceremonial grade this morning?" His hands were legit shaking as he stormed over to my desk. "What did you do with my matcha?" "Dude, why'd you ask me? Why would I even touch your stupid tea stuff?" "Because you're jealous," he sneered. "Because you know you'll never have the same clarity, purpose, or enlightenment with your coffee." "Brian, it's just tea," I nervously chuckled. "Calm down, okay? We'll get you more." "Just tea?" I nearly jumped as he grabbed my ceramic mug and hurled it against the floor. "Matcha is life. Matcha is consciousness. Without it, there's only darkness and confusion." Sarah stood up, backing toward the door.
Brian, chill, please.
"You did this," he accused.
You ruined everything! Months of cleansing! Now I'll show you what happens when you interfere with enlightenment!
Before we could blink, Brian picked up a chair and hurled it at the window. The glass exploded inward, sending sharp fragments across the office floor. The alarm system started blaring.
Brian, stop!
I shouted. It was a bit late. Brian had already lunged at me with a piece of broken glass in his hand, his eyes wide and completely unfocused. Sarah screamed as I dodged, sending Brian crashing into his desk. His computer monitor crumpled into pieces.
You poisoned my temple!
He screamed, picking up another glass shard.
You destroyed my connection to the green wisdom!
Before we could reach the door, Brian turned to me and aimed for my arm. The glass sliced my skin, resulting in bleeding quite immediately. As I stood grabbing my arm in pain, he kneeled down and started praying.
I'm sorry, my lord. Forgive this sinner by accepting his blood sacrifice as an offering.
He kept praying as he rocked back and forth. We ran to the conference room and slammed the door, pushing chairs against it as a barricade. Through the glass walls, we could see Brian running around the office, slapping himself, uprooting his own hair like he had totally lost all sense of reasoning. He found another chair and started smashing it against the conference room window, trying to break through to us.
The god is offended! He wants offerings! I must sacrifice both of you! I have to!
We had to call the cops. It took 3 officers to restrain Brian as he fought them, still ranting about tea ceremonies and mind purification, still bleeding from all the cuts on his arms and hands. Officer Thompson took our statements. We admitted to dumping the matcha, expecting maybe a lecture about workplace pranks.
You had no idea what you were dealing with,
he said instead.
It's a severe mental illness that you triggered. You could have died.
They found Brian's apartment filled with thousands of dollars of matcha supplies, detailed journals about tea enlightenment, and evidence that he'd been consuming dangerous amounts of caffeine through excessive matcha consumption for months.
The powder was the only thing keeping his psychosis stable,
Thompson explained.
When you removed it, you removed his anchor to reality.
Brian spent 6 weeks in a psychiatric hold. The company paid for counseling for Sarah and me, but I couldn't shake the image of him screaming about human sacrifice. I should have listened when my roommate Maya warned me about walking alone after night classes. She's been obsessing over these missing girls cases around the campus, 3 in 6 months, all of whom had vanished after evening psychology lectures. The university had managed to keep it under the rug, but students like Maya had a way of getting insider scoops. But there I was, at 9:47 p.m., broke with a dead phone, walking the exact same route where Sarah Byrne, Monica Rivera, and Ashley Park were last seen alive. Professor Scott's lecture had run late again, and I had to stay behind to help her with tomorrow's notes. As I walked on the deserted streets, the November cold cut through my jacket like knives. Those old oak trees behind the building created this wall of darkness. The woods stretched for miles, thick enough to hide anything. All of a sudden, I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow and deliberate, and mimicked my pace. I turned around to see a tall guy in a wrinkled suit some 20 feet behind me. He was grinning, staring like he'd won a stupid lottery. Even in the dim light, everything felt wrong with his face.
Riz God never loses.
He whistled, loud enough only for me to hear. My blood turned ice cold. It felt as if the wind had picked up pace. I walked faster. He matched my pace perfectly. When I glanced back, I saw his phone held up with the camera pointed at me. The blue glow lit up his stubbled face, and I could see he was older and scarier than I thought. Maybe 30, with dead eyes.
You're my baby,
he called out.
Don't resist, just duet with me.
I'd seen this before. Maya had shown me TikToks of girls being followed and filmed without consent. Without wasting a second, I fumbled for my phone and groaned, remembering it was dead. Panic crawled up my throat as I realized how isolated we were. The woods stretched to my right, empty buildings lined my left, and at least 4 blocks separated me from any main streets or human presence.
Come on, don't be difficult.
He clicked his tongue. His voice is louder now.
Jen Bear thinks she's too good for us, huh?
My heart stalled for a beat before slamming into overdrive.
Hey, at least say hi to my friends.
He chuckled.
You're gonna be all over the internet. Viral, just like the others.
The others? Was he talking about the missing girls? I ran toward the woods instead of away, hoping to throw him off. Maybe I could loop around and make it back to campus in time. But the trees felt like they were closing in, swallowing me as I pushed deeper into the dark.
Brave girl!
He hooted, while chasing me like a creep in shadows. It took everything not to collapse. I forced myself to focus, scanning for a way out. Then I remembered something Maya showed me, an emergency feature on our student ID app. Even with a dead phone, the panic button would ping my location to campus security. I pulled out my phone, praying for enough battery. The screen flickered as I hit emergency, then turned to face him. I screamed.
I've called the campus security! They know I'm here!
El Riz for being a spoiled sport.
He growled. I flinched as the soft click of a blade echoed through the rustling trees.
I'll make this special for my followers.
The knife was small but sharp, with dark stains on the blade that made me sick. Without hesitation, he pressed it against his arm and carved an L into his skin. Blood ran down his hand, but he never stopped smiling. He licked the blood off his skin, then said,
See how dedicated I am? The others didn't appreciate my commitment, but I've a feeling you will.
I started running again. I knew if he got me, that'd be the end for me. He was constantly yelling at me to stop and pose for his followers, but all I could see was an endless tree line no matter which direction I headed.
Riz God takes what he wants!
He screamed. There was only darkness and the sound of him getting closer. My lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. Then, I saw red and blue lights flashing through the trees. A siren was growing louder.
No, no, no!
He screamed behind me.
We were just getting to the good part!
I stumbled out as 2 patrol cars pulled up. Officers had weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through darkness.
Jennifer Morrison?
One called.
Campus security got your emergency alert.
I collapsed, sobbing with relief. They caught him 20 feet behind me, still holding the bloody knife, still grinning. As they cuffed the man, I heard an officer radio.
We got him. The TikTok killer, Marcus Webb.
Later at the station, they showed me his phone. We had hours of footage of girls walking alone, running scared and begging to be spared. He ran a twisted forum on the dark web where he unloaded the last moments of his victims. His follower count was hundreds of thousands. People actually watched this stuff, bet money, and enjoyed it. Officer Williams said they'd been tracking him across multiple states. I was supposed to be victim number 7. They found the bodies 2 days later, all buried in those woods, shallow graves marked with carved wooden stakes. The trial was a circus. His lawyers claimed performance art and mental illness, but the evidence was overwhelming. Hours of footage showing him stalking women while his audience cheered. He got life without parole. His TikTok got banned, but the videos are still out there, shared on dark corners of the internet. I don't walk alone anymore, ever, and I obsessively check my phone battery. Sometimes I think about his followers, those thousands of people who watched girls being tortured mercilessly and typed W in the comments. They're still out there, waiting for the next sick creator to follow the trend and keep the loop going.